Chapter 1971. But it was impossible for that woman to see through his identity, because the enemy would not be stupid enough to make a move in the Dao development field after seeing through his identity. At this point, Lin Sun had won 3 matches in a row. This performance was still somewhat inferior. In the other 17 arenas, people like Chu Qiu and Gu Jinxing had won at least 5 matches in a row, while others had won 7 matches in a row. There were also some experts who were the first to appear and were defeated by the challengers. In short, it was the peerless figures like Chu Qiu and Gu Jinxing who were shining brightly. Lin Sun's battle record was still not too eye-catching. Lin Sun could not be bothered with this. Winning was really meaningless to him. He just wanted to observe as much as possible and experience the power of his opponent's Dao domain. That was all. In the 4th match, Lin Sun's opponent was an extremely famous saber cultivator named Gao Lingtian. He came from a clan that was only considered a medium force in the cloud state. He was at the peak of the late-stage Saint King realm and had a rugged and angular appearance. Gao Lingtian was extremely famous. He had the title of Fiendish Blade Saint King among the younger generation. The Dao domain he condensed, Saber Chime Purgatory, was praised by some old antiques. That kid is in trouble. In the assessment seats, Tao Songting could not help but say when he noticed this scene, "The outcome will only be known after the fight." I noticed that Jin Dui was still holding back in the first 3 matches. Lady Yu, who was dressed in green, asked with interest. Han Yu opened his mouth to say something but held it back in the end. He also knew that because of the bet just now, Tao Songting was very unhappy. Right now, he did not intend to provoke him anymore. Because of Gao Lingtian's appearance in this battle, it also attracted the attention of many people in the field. Even Lin Sun was noticed. This was the influence of Fiendish Blade Saint King. However, the most discussed topic was how many moves Lin Sun disguised as Jin Dui could last under Gao Lingtian's saber. Almost no one thought that Lin Sun would win. Hearing these discussions, Tao Songting smiled without saying a word. He probably thought that the audience's eyes were still sharp. Han Yu found it funny and thought to himself, "I'll see if your faces will hurt when the results of the battle are out." Clang! In the arena, a dazzling blade suddenly appeared. In Gao Lingtian's hand, a snow-white saber that emitted a boundless cold current appeared. The blade was engraved with a mysterious totem, vaguely showing the shocking phenomenon of a fire dragon devouring the sky. With the saber in hand, Gao Lingtian's aura changed along with it. It was as if he had transformed into a saber, standing tall between the heavens and the earth, its sharpness unparalleled. The fierce power caused many experts present to feel a stabbing pain in their hearts, and they were extremely shocked. But Lin Sun was still as calm and emotionless as before. Extreme madness. Gao Lingtian did not waste any time and waved his saber to kill. Whoosh! When he swung his saber, it was as if he had gone mad. The saber chi that he released also showed a wild and tyrannical aura that ignored the world and wanted to break all shackles. The void was torn apart like a canvas, and the sound of an explosion surged and spread. That flash of saber chi instantly stunned many spectators. Lin Sun didn't move, but a wisp of sword chi swept out. It was mysterious and unconstrained, like a natural sculpture, without a trace of worldly aura. Bang! That flash of saber chi and sword chi collided and exploded inch by inch in the void. Extreme madness. Without hesitation, Gao Lingtian's momentum changed from madness to madness, and he swung his saber again. It was raging and violent, like the roaring wind and sea rain, sweeping the universe. All the madness was vented by the power of this saber. Lin Sun's eyes were filled with surprise. This kind of saber Tao was based on the 7 emotions and 6 desires, and it could deduce different amazing phenomena. Crazy, it was crazy to the extreme. Crazy, it was crazy to the extreme. Lin Sun didn't hesitate and waved his fist to kill. Gao Lingtian couldn't pose a threat to him. What he was interested in was the power of Saber Tao that Gao Lingtian interpreted. Boom! The sky was dark, and the divine light roared. Gao Lingtian and Lin Sun fought against each other. One of them was full of saber chi, crazy and domineering, which dazzled all the spectators. The other one was like a floating cloud in the sky, calm and at ease. As his sword chi flowed, it showed an unearthly spirit. For a time, it attracted a lot of attention. Even the participants in the battle zone turned to look at him. Jin Di is also amazing. It's really surprising that he can compete with Gao Lingtian. In terms of cultivation, Jin Di is a little weaker. Strictly speaking, Gao Lingtian is slightly inferior. That's not necessarily true. Gao Lingtian has just appeared and obviously reserve his combat power. There was a lot of discussion. Lin Sun's performance also entered the vision of most people. Many people realized that this unknown rogue cultivator Jin Di was actually a hidden character. This naturally aroused people's interest. However, Gao Lingtian's performance was still unanimously favored, especially some young women, who even screamed excitedly to cheer for the Saint King of Demonic Saber. Extreme madness. On the arena, Gao Lingtian's momentum changed again, becoming stronger and stronger. In the madness, there was a kind of extreme obsession. Obsession with Saber, obsession with Tao. Therefore, he was crazy because of obsession. Good. I didn't expect that there would be such a character in the first round of selection. I underestimated this selection before. Lin Sun nodded secretly. Although Gao Lingtian's combat power still couldn't threaten him, it let him see a kind of unique saber power. Just like how Lin Feng sought the path of the Tao of, I am the only one in the entire universe. Gao Lingtian's Tao of the saber instead had a path of the saber Tao that was pure madness and madness. There was no superiority or inferiority. It only depended on the depth of attainments on their own way of Tao. At this time, many people in the field had been moved. On the one hand, they were shocked by the power of Gao Lingtian's saber, and on the other hand, they were surprised by Lin Sun's performance. Because from the beginning to the present, Gao Lingtian's momentum had changed again and again, and the power released was also rising. But Lin Sun still took all of them, and there was no sign of being suppressed from beginning to end. Jin Duyi. Why have I never heard of this name in Yinzhou before? Is he from the star region outside the primordial world? It must be so. I heard that there are many peerless geniuses in the starry sky. They crossed the starry sky and arrived in the primordial world a long time ago in order to participate in the Tao discussion conference. Jin Duyi must be one of them. Now there's a show to watch. The audience was in an uproar. The dazzling performance of Chu Qiu and Gu Jinxing was not surprising, because these peerless figures had long been famous in Yinzhou. But Jin Duyi's arrival was a surprise and a novelty, as if a rising comet had been discovered, a dark horse that had jumped out of nowhere. Brother Tao, it seems that you're wrong this time. Madam, you said with a smile. That's not necessarily true. Do you think that Gao Lingtian, a peerless saber practitioner, will lose? Tao Songting said indifferently. Han Yu resisted the urge to speak and said in his heart, although Gao Lingtian is strong, he is far inferior to Shi Ling of mysterious Void Island, and Shi Ling was almost killed by Jin Di. Clang. On the arena, the sound of swords and sabers colliding shook the sky. This battle was so wonderful that it even stole the limelight of other arenas. More and more practitioners began to pay attention to this battle. Even Chu Qiu, Gu Jinxing, and Zhuo Fengying, who were fighting with their opponents, would pay attention to this battle from time to time. As peerless Saint Kings, especially peerless figures who had extraordinary attainments in this realm, they were not interested in ordinary opponents at all. Originally, Lin Sun disguised as Jin Duyi was ignored by them. But now they found that Jin Duyi was a powerful figure who had hidden himself very well. It should be known that even if they were to fight with Gao Lingtian, they would not dare to neglect him. However, no one knew that from the beginning of the battle, Lin Sun had been restraining the idea of defeating Gao Lingtian. He needed such an opponent and the power of the Great Way that the opponent had mastered to observe, comprehend, and refine. Everything was to condense his own realm of Tao. The core of his great way furnace scripture was to contain all the Tao in the world and all the Dharma in the world. The realm of Tao that he wanted to condense in the future should also be in perfect harmony with his own Tao and Dharma. It was undoubtedly too difficult to achieve this step. From the half a year on the boat to the few months after arriving in the primordial world, he had been pondering and studying this matter. The core purpose of reading the Book of Herbs of Heaven, traveling across many states and territories, and even going to the arena to discuss Tao with his opponent was to condense the realm of Tao. Read 10,000 books, travel 10,000 miles, leave the world to meditate, enter the world to temper. All for this. On the arena, Gao Lingtian became more and more crazy, and obsessed. His saber roared, splashing out a raging, fierce, and pure waterfall, like the Milky Way pouring down from the sky. His entire person was immersed in an extremely boiling battle state. At this point in the battle, the only thought that came to his mind was, this Jin Dui was an extremely rare opponent. This made him not surprised, but happy. Only such an opponent could let him have no scruples in the battle and attack with all his strength without any worries. However, if he knew Lin Sun's thoughts during the battle, he would probably suffer a great mental blow, because Lin Sun's mind was not on the battle at all. The reason why he restrained and reserved was that he wanted to understand as much as possible some of the secrets that were useful to him. Boom! Suddenly, on the arena, Gao Lingtian's momentum changed again. He let out a long roar and waved the saber in his hand. The white saber chi surged, and a strict realm of Tao came down. In the realm, the saber chi was boiling, and the saber light was like a prison. Lin Sun was waiting for this moment. Without hesitation, he flashed in. Isn't he courting death? Many people were stunned, and the practitioners who had witnessed Lin Sun's first 3 battles from the beginning felt their scalp tingle. It was the same again. It was the same when he fought against Dong Shui. It was the same when he fought against Wang Jinyang. Chapter 1972. Hong Yu's lips twitched on the assessment seat. He saw all the consternation and puzzlement in the field. But only he knew that Jin Di didn't do this out of audacity. He didn't seek his own death. It was because he had always liked to defeat his enemies in their most powerful battle techniques. Shi Ling, who controlled the Hell Road of No Return, was also defeated in this way. Gao Lingtian was also stunned at first and found it hard to believe. Up to now, Lin's combat power had been recognized by him, and he even regarded Lin as a strong opponent worthy of fighting with all his strength. However, he didn't expect that his opponent, who had been calm and composed before, would take the initiative at this moment. The purgatory of saber chant was the embodiment of his cultivation, which made him famous in Yunzhou and the root of being called the king of demonic saber. No one has ever been able to get out of my Tao field alive. Are you an exception? Gao Lingtian's heart surged with an unparalleled fighting intent, and his whole body was completely burning. He didn't talk nonsense and ran his killing moves with all his strength. He raised his hand. Inside his Dao domain, white saber chi surged. There were tens of thousands of them, and they looked like a purgatory of sabers. The sharp, domineering, and unparalleled Tao of saber appeared at this moment. Lin Sun walked in it, as if he was walking in a sea of fire and a mountain of knives. All directions were filled with white saber chi. The saber chi was like a purgatory, which wanted to cut people into pieces and kill them. If it were someone in the same realm as him, he might not be able to resist it. But Lin Sun seemed to be so calm. As he raised his hand, wisps of sword chi appeared and defeated the attacks from all directions. The sword chi was the essence of Tai Xian Sword Sutra. The power of the Great Way imprinted in the sword chi was the embodiment of Lin Sun's cultivation. Bang! Bang! The sound of collision rang out incessantly, like a peerless saber king and a peerless sword master fighting for the top. The scene was shocking. Good. Gao Lingtian's eyes became more and more blazing like the burning sun. Only such a formidable opponent was able to completely stimulate the potential within his body, allowing him to be fearless and release his strength to his heart's content. He took a deep breath and suddenly let out a long roar. My saber is like the Tao. The Tao domain turned into a boundless saber hell. The unparalleled saber torrent revealed an indestructible and unparalleled destructive aura that pierced through the 9 heavens and 10 lands. At this moment, Gao Lingtian was like a madman. How many people are like me in this world? Crazy about the saber, crazy like a devil? His demeanor surprised Lin Sun. This guy's firm pursuit of the saber Tao was definitely the craziest one Lin Sun had ever seen. Lin Sun was not careless at this moment. He felt that it was necessary for him to respect this rare opponent. Hence, he also used his true abilities. Buzz. A grain of sand was like a world, condensing into the seal of all beings. An ancient and boundless aura instantly spread throughout the saber, humming purgatory. The unparalleled white torrent of saber chi was dyed with a layer of turbid yellow aura. Vaguely, the pious chanting of sutras could be heard. Boom! As the seal of all beings descended, the endless torrents of saber energy in all directions shattered and scattered like rain. Boom! The saber-humming purgatory, which Gao Lingtian regarded as the foundation of his saber Tao, trembled violently. At the same time, Gao Lingfeng was shocked. His face turned pale, and he said in disbelief, "Is this your real strength?" It was also at this moment that he suddenly realized that he had been wrong. He had been wrong because he had not seen through Lin Sun's real strength from the beginning to the end. Sort of, Lin Sun said casually. Boom! When his voice fell, under the pressure of the all-being seal, the saber-humming purgatory, which was praised by many old antiques, was smashed. At this moment, the saber chi turned into a violent and chaotic torrent, spreading over the arena. If it weren't for the ancient forbidden formation on the arena, once it spread, it would definitely cause an unimaginable disaster. God, it's broken? Gao Lingtian's Tao domain. How could it be broken? It's impossible. The experts who had been paying close attention to this battle were shocked at this moment. Many people even stood up and cried out involuntarily. The scene was simply too unbelievable. Previously, no one believed that anyone could escape from the Tao domain of the saber chime purgatory. This, Tao Songting's expression froze, and he couldn't calm down. This result also surprised him. This Jin Dui is really unexpected. I can't help but admire him. Madame Yu sighed with emotion. Han Yu felt relieved. This was Jin Dui, a peerless figure who had shocked all the big shots of Xuanji sect. Now he was just dealing with Gao Lingtian. How could he lose? At this moment, almost all the eyes in the audience were attracted by this scene, and their hearts trembled. Bang! On the arena, in the smoke and dust, Gao Lingtian staggered and fell to the ground. His clothes were ragged, his hair was disheveled, his face was pale and transparent, and blood was flowing from the corner of his mouth. But he seemed to be unaware of it, and his eyes were fixed straight ahead. There, Lin Sun stood, spotless, indifferent and calm as before. I've lost. I'm convinced, after a while, Gao Lingtian wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and sighed. Your Tao is demonic and crazy, extremely domineering. Not bad. Lin Sun said. Gao Lingtian's saber, Tao, inspired him and reminded him of the saint method that had been ignored by him. This supreme fighting method inherited from his senior brother had been used by him to operate and improve his combat power. However, he had never considered if he could fuse this technique into his own Tao domain. Clang! Gao Lingtian put away his saber and cupped his hands to Lin Sun. Jin Dui, you are the first to defeat me in my Tao domain. In the future, I will try my best not to let this happen again. After saying that, he jumped off the arena, and his dignified and thin figure looked handsome and lonely. And Lin Sun on the arena became the only focus of attention in the audience. This was Lin Sun's 4th victory. Although he had a good performance before, the attention he received was far less than that of the other dazzling figures on the arena. But now, as he defeated Gao Lingtian, he had also entered the sights of all the spectators in the arena. Jin Dui, a powerful figure who came out like a dark horse. But just a moment later, an exclamation sounded. Gao Lingtian. He broke through after the battle. It's true. All of a sudden, many old monsters were alarmed, and their eyes, which were originally focused on Lin Sun, all looked in one place. They saw Gao Lingfeng, who had left, suddenly stopped and sat cross-legged on the ground, as if he had an epiphany, and his body emitted layers of magical Tao light. It was visible to the naked eye that the aura around him skyrocketed like a river after the rain. From the peak of late stage of Saint King to the mastery realm, Tao Songting's eyes brightened with admiration. Gao Lingtian deserves to be a genius in Saber Tao. It can only be said that Jin Di gave him the opportunity to break through. Hong Yu said indifferently. Tao Songting suddenly felt sick in his heart. He kept mentioning Jin Di. Was Hong Yu really going to oppose him to the end? Gao Lingtian's breakthrough suddenly caused a sensation in the audience. He was also the only peerless figure who had a miraculous epiphany and breakthrough after being defeated since the selection of Tao discussion. Chu Qiu, Gu Jianxing, Zhuo Fengying, and other young talents all had different expressions on their faces. At their level, it was more difficult to go further in cultivation than to ascend to the sky. It was impossible to achieve it only by practicing hard. To break through, opportunities and insights were needed. Obviously, the battle with Jin Di was a fortuitous encounter for Gao Lingtian. He successfully grasped it and broke through to the next realm. Therefore, at this moment, Chu Qiu and others had unconsciously attached importance to Lin Sun and regarded him as an opponent that could not be ignored. This battle is wonderful. Many people shouted excitedly. Jin Di, who was unexpectedly powerful, and Gao Lingtian, who had long been famous, staged an unparalleled battle with ups and downs. The unexpected result of the battle was definitely the biggest surprise since the selection of Tao discussion. Is it too late to bet on Jin Di now? Some gamblers couldn't help but be tempted. However, the focus of the audience was soon replaced by the battles in other arenas. Because not long after Lin Sun defeated Gao Lingtian, Chu Qiu successfully defeated the 10th opponent and became the first peerless figure to win 10 consecutive victories since the first round of selection. There was no doubt that he had the qualification to enter the second round of selection. In this way, the focus of the audience also moved to Chu Qiu, and the audience was stirred up. Senior, may I ask if I can continue to accept challenges? On the arena, Chu Qiu's voice was clear and resounded throughout the audience. Yes, Tao Songting and others looked at each other and didn't refuse, because the rules didn't stipulate that one couldn't continue to fight after winning 10 consecutive victories. My God, what is Chu Qiu doing? He must want to take this opportunity to challenge his limits. But in this way, there will be fewer opportunities for other practitioners to seek 10 consecutive victories. After all, there are only 3 days. The audience was in an uproar and discussed incessantly. Is Chu Qiu unwilling to be robbed of his limelight by Jin Di? A touch of coldness appeared between Gu Jianxing's eyebrows. Before long, he also defeated the 10th opponent and became the second strong practitioner to win 10 consecutive victories. However, the attention he received was not as sensational as that of Chu Qiu. This made him quite unwilling, and he immediately said, Seniors, after winning 10 consecutive victories, am I qualified to continue to challenge in other arenas? As soon as these words came out, the audience couldn't help but be moved. They realized that Gu Jianxing was also unwilling to stop at 10 consecutive victories and wanted to continue to show off his power. Obviously, he was serious about competing with Chu Qiu. Tao Songting, Madame Yu, Hong Yu, and other 7 big shots on the assessment seats were also surprised. After a short discussion, they finally agreed. Chapter 1973. In fact, this sword was Gu Jianxing's killing move, which integrated the mystery of his own Tao field into one sword. Lin Sun had killed Kong Yin, the quasi-emperor. The boundless thousand sword shadow that Lin Sun had honed for 8,000 years was terrifying. Compared with it, Gu Jianxing's sword, although much inferior in power, was not inferior to the boundless thousand sword shadow in terms of momentum. This made Lin Sun sigh that Gu Jianxing was really excellent. Unfortunately, for himself, it was not enough. Lin Sun grasped with his palm and fingers. Like a divine rainbow out of the sky, the fiery red sword chi that descended to the world was directly caught between Lin Sun's fingers and palm. When he closed his fingers, the incomparably sharp sword chi was immediately crushed, turning into a fiery rain of light and pouring through his fingers. The audience was shocked and felt it was incredible. This was Gu Jianxing's killing move, but it was crushed like a piece of paper. Tao Songting's eyelids twitched and his face changed slightly. Void flowing sword. On the arena, Gu Jianxing's eyes were like sharp swords, and he attacked again without hesitation. His power was like the wind sweeping the fallen leaves, and his sword was like a flame attack. His power was getting stronger and stronger, like a sword master in the fire. Lin Sun's strength had made him feel threatened. How could he dare to hesitate? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In a moment, the arena seemed to be covered with a layer of flame sky, in which there were all crisscrossing fiery red sword chi. Whistling like a gale, overbearing like thunder, majestic like a torrent, swift like light and shadow, Gu Jianxing's figure flickered, his body and hair surging with flame Taoist patterns, and his power was so great that it dominated the audience. Countless sounds of gasping and swallowing were heard one after another in the arena. Many spectators were dazzled and their minds swayed. Before, when Gu Jianxing won 10 consecutive victories, he did not use such monstrous fighting power. It could be seen that the appearance of Jin Dui had forced Gu Jianxing to use his real trump card. Fiery sword curtain. Gu Jianxing shouted. Suddenly, the flaming rain of swords that crisscrossed the arena suddenly condensed, and it transformed into a gorgeous, vast, and blazing Dao domain. This time, Lin Sun chose not to take the initiative to enter, because in the previous duel, Lin Sun had learned the power of the Tao field that Gu Jian had mastered from his repeated attacks. Whether or not he entered the Fire Dragon Sword screen, again, there was no difference. However, for Gu Jianxing, activating his Dao domain allowed him to release all his strength. What a sword Dao domain! Such a scene is truly rare. Many people exclaimed. Some of the old monsters couldn't sit still. Seeing that Lin's figure was about to be covered by the fiery and magnificent sword curtain, he suddenly waved his fist and punched forward. The force of his fist was condensed like a mountain and suffused with the glow of the Tao. However, it surged with the aura of the Tao that seemed like a furnace yet wasn't a furnace, like an abyss yet wasn't an abyss. Bang! A dull sound rang out, and the descending Fire Dragon Sword screen suddenly stopped in midair. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, dense cracks that were like spider webs appeared on the Fire Dragon Sword screen. Then rumble. This sword domain that was formed from Gu Jian's Tao didn't even have the time to release its might before it rumbled and exploded on the arena. A rain of fiery red light that covered the sky was mixed with explosions that shook the heavens and the earth as it filled the arena. Bang! On the other hand, Gu Jianxing's figure shook before he staggered to the ground, and he bled from all 7 apertures while his countenance was terrifyingly pale. This punch didn't just destroy his Dao domain, and it caused him to suffer severe internal injuries as well. His internal organs seemed to have shifted while his vital blood was in disorder. The Dao development grounds was perfectly silent, and everyone was shocked. A single punch had blasted apart a shocking Dao domain. On the other hand, someone as formidable and dazzling as Gu Jianxing had actually been heavily injured. For a time, everyone felt dazed. Earlier, they were extremely confident when they fought Gu Jianxing, and they felt that Jin Di was bound to stop at 9 successive victories before Gu Jianxing. But now, the cruel reality was like a slap that struck fiercely on their faces. No matter how dazzling or renowned Gu Jianxing was, so what? He was still no match for Jin Di. At this moment, some of the women that cheered and screamed madly for Gu Jianxing earlier seemed as if they'd eaten a fly, and they were unable to accept such a scene. How formidable! Chu Qiu was visibly moved while his heart shook. He was most clearly aware of how formidable Gu Jianxing was, and Gu Jianxing was was one of the few opponents he'd taken note of during the selections. Yet now, Gu Jinxing had actually been heavily injured by Jin Dui, who'd appeared out of nowhere, and this had similarly exceeded Chu Qiu's expectations. This kid really concealed his strength deeply. Tao Songting revealed a wisp of a complicated expression. He had no choice but to admit that he'd misjudged Jin Dui and greatly underestimated Jin Dui's strength. Truthfully speaking, even I never expected this. Madam Yu revealed a wisp of a bitter smile. Even though she'd always looked favorably upon Lin's son, she felt surprised and shocked when she witnessed such a scene. Only Hong Yu was very composed and delighted in his heart. It was like he'd imperceptibly used Lin's son to slap Tao Songting. On the arena, Gu Jinxing's expression was extremely complicated as well. There was shock, bewilderment, and bewilderment. He wasn't careless, nor did he underestimate his opponent. He just didn't expect that the opponent he'd chosen this time would conceal his strength so deeply, and his strength would be so terrible. Even if he tried his best, he couldn't shake Jin Dui. It turns out that in front of you, my swordsmanship is really as pale and powerless as my words, he uttered bitterly. He got up and turned his head to leave. There was no need to fight anymore, for he was doomed to be defeated. He walked down the arena in a desolate manner. All the spectators who saw this scene couldn't help sighing in their hearts. Gu Jinxing, a dazzling genius of swordsmanship, had already won 10 consecutive victories and was qualified to enter the second round of selections. He won a lot of praise and fame. But now, with his defeat in front of Jin Dui, all the praise and fame had turned into nothingness. At this moment, he was like a stepping stone for Jin Dui. No matter how dazzling and powerful he was, as long as he was mentioned, Jin Dui was a mountain that couldn't be avoided. After this battle, Gu Jinxing had no chance to continue to challenge, and he was doomed to be unable to fight against Chu Qiu. However, despite this, Gu Jinxing could also enter the second round of selections, which was a blessing and misfortune. With the departure of Gu Jinxing, the silent atmosphere in the field was also broken. There was an uproar everywhere, and all eyes were focused on Lin's son. Jin Dui, an independent cultivator of mysterious origins, was like a dark horse that soared into the sky during the Dao discussion selection today. Dong Shifu, Wang Jinyang, Gao Lingtian, all the strong people who were favored by people were defeated by him one by one. And in the battle where he won 10 consecutive victories, he defeated Gu Jinxing in one fell swoop. This was something that no one had expected before. Therefore, when they looked at Lin's son on the arena again at this moment, all eyes were filled with shock. This also made people more and more certain that Jin Di was definitely not a cultivator in Yinzhou, but a peerless figure from other worlds in the starry sky. Otherwise, with the combat power he showed, he would have been famous long ago, and it was impossible for him to be noticed until now. Someone calculated the time. From the time when no one was interested in the battle to now, only 30 minutes had passed, and Jin Di's name had already shocked the audience. The speed and momentum of his rise were enough to make people stunned. On the assessment seat, Hong Yu smiled slightly. This Jin Di is really an eye-opener. The corner of Tao Songting's mouth twitched. He raised his hand to take off the Reimu hairpin and threw it to Hong Yu, saying, "You win." Hong Yu hurriedly said, "I just guessed, but I didn't expect to guess it by luck." "Brother Tao, don't mind me." Tao Songting said grumpily, "Well, a loss is a loss. Don't think that I can't afford to lose." Madam Yu pursed her lips and smiled. Other quasi-emperors secretly sighed with emotion. This Jin Di was indeed a dark horse that surprised them. The more famous Gu Jinxing was, the more extraordinary Jin Di was. This was the tragedy of becoming a stepping stone. Hey, Jin Di hasn't left the arena after 10 consecutive victories. Is he going to continue to accept challenges? Someone was surprised to find that Lin was still standing on the arena. For a moment, many people also looked over. Even Gu Jinxing is no match for him. Who dares to challenge him? Many experts waiting in the participating area felt bitter in their hearts. Chu Qiu, Zhuo Fengying, and others had dominated the arena, which had already made them feel pressured. Now Gu Jinxing had just left, and Jin Dui, who was stronger than Gu Jianqing, appeared, which made them feel suffocated. That's not necessarily true. As Senior Tao Songting said, there's a limit to one's strength. Jin Dui has fought 10 battles in a row. How can he not be exhausted? Some people were not convinced. If we can seize this opportunity, we might be able to defeat him. Sure enough, as if the words of this person were true, it didn't take long for a practitioner to come forward to challenge. But in just a moment, he was defeated by Lin on the arena. Someone gritted his teeth and shouted, "If you fail, you just have to fight again. If you don't even have the courage to fight, why participate in the selection of Tao discussion? Why seek the Great Way?" These words were like a blazing flame that caused the hearts of all the spectating participants to surge. Exactly. If you lose, then stand up and continue fighting. If you don't fight because of fear, then when will you be able to stand out? Attack. For a time, many participants charged out with surging hearts and firm gazes. It wasn't that they'd been bewitched by a few words, and it was because the rules of the selection were very clear. Even if they were defeated, they still had the chance to challenge others. This was equivalent to giving them numerous opportunities to strive for. For a time, besides Lin Sun's arena, the Lightning Arena where Chu Qiu, Zhuo Fengying, and the others resided had been targeted by many participants. On the other hand, the spectators in the Dao Development Reserve were excited and filled with anticipation when they saw this. This is what a true expert should do. Chapter 1975. If a person did not even have the courage to challenge the strong, he was destined to be a good-for-nothing for the rest of his life. Similarly, if a cultivator did not have the courage to fight, it would be wishful thinking if he wanted to go further on the Great Way. Right now, the participants were in high spirits and their blood was boiling. This scene naturally stirred many people's hearts. This was what a strong cultivator should be like. Lin Sun was also very satisfied. He did not care about winning or losing. What he cared about was being able to see and experience the power of the Dao realm. In the following time, one fierce battle after another took place in the 18 arenas. Some were evenly matched, and the battle was splendid. Some were as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, shocking people's hearts. Some were surrounded by perils and gripping one's heart. Only Lin Sun's arena had always displayed a certain style. That was, no matter who the opponent was, no matter what status they had, and no matter what great way power they had mastered, they would always be defeated in the end. Either admit defeat or be beaten into admitting defeat. And Lin Sun had been as calm and composed as a mountain from beginning to end. The feeling he gave people was one sentence: terrifyingly steady. Time passed. For hours later, the only ones who had not been defeated in the arena were Lin Sun, Chu Qiu, Zhuo Fengying, and Shilong. In other words, from the beginning of the first round of selection until now, the four of them had been like the masters of the arena, defeating their opponents one by one and persisting until now. Among them, Chu Qiu's performance was expected by everyone, because everyone knew how outstanding Chu Qiu of the Tianmong God Mountain was. Zhuo Fengying was an outstanding beauty with a temperament as cold as snow. Dressed in purple, she had short hair that reached her ears, her cheeks were moist, and her nose was greasy. She came from an ancient clan in the Cloud State, the Golden Crane Ancient Clan. The spear Dao that she mastered was as sharp as the wind and as illusory as a dream. It was so superb that no one had been able to defeat her until now. Like Chu Qiu, Zhuo Fengying's performance was not surprising. Shilong was a peerless figure of the older generation. He had been in the early stage of peerless sage state for 600 years, and he was an elder of a second-rate force in the Cloud State. However, his performance in the first round of selection had shocked everyone. Even a peak late-stage Saint King had been defeated by him. It was also at that time that Shilong's true cultivation was exposed. It turned out that this senior figure had long been in existence at the peak of the late stage of Saint King. However, as Lin Sun rushed out like a dark horse, Shilong's brilliance was suddenly overshadowed. Anyway, Shilong was a big shot in Yinzhou, but Lin Sun was different. Before this, no one had heard of Jin Dui in Yinzhou. He had never imagined that even Gao Lingtian and Gu Jianxing would be defeated by him. The battle had reached this point. Chu Qiu had already obtained 27 consecutive victories. His temples were slightly wet and his face was pale. There were a few bloody wounds on his body, but apart from that, he had not suffered any serious injuries. Zhou Fengying had won 24 consecutive victories. In comparison, her injuries were more severe. Her face was pale and translucent, and she was panting slightly. There was a trace of exhaustion between her brows. Shilong had obtained 21 consecutive victories, and his situation was even worse. His left arm had been blown off, and his entire body was covered in blood and wounds. Everyone could see that Shilong could not hold on for much longer. Lin Sun had obtained 23 consecutive victories, and only he was still untouched and unscathed. His expression had not changed, and he was as calm as ever. This surprised countless people. It should be known that Lin Sun had fought fiercely with Gu Jianxing and Gao Lingtian. Comparatively speaking, his physical strength should have been more exhausted, but he was the only one who had not been injured. This Jin Dui is really unreasonably strong. Tao Songting was completely shocked and sighed with emotion. At this time, he had no choice but to be convinced. Brother Tao, you can't compete with me. Jin Dui is the first one I have my eyes on. Sooner or later, he will become the successor of our divine sect of Cloud Star. Lady Yu said vigilantly. Some of the quasi-emperors next to her were also tempted and had the idea of drawing Jin Dui to their side. It would naturally be better if they could recruit such a rogue cultivator into their own force. But after listening to Lady Yu's words, they could not help but smile bitterly. But Hong Yu knew that even Lady Yu would not be able to achieve her wish. Time passed little by little. During this period, there were also some strong people who stood out and won 10 consecutive victories in other arenas, but most of them chose to stop and did not continue to fight. However, although these strong people who won 10 consecutive victories caused a lot of sensation, they could not compare with Lin Sun and Chu Qiu. Another 10 minutes passed. Shilong took the initiative to admit defeat in his fierce battle with his 24th opponent because his injuries were extremely serious and his physical strength was on the verge of drying up. His admission of defeat made many spectators breathe a sigh of relief and admire him from the bottom of their hearts. It was already an extraordinary feat for an elder to be able to fight to this point. Not long after Shirku admitted defeat on another arena, Zhou Fengying, after defeating her 29th opponent, voluntarily gave up the arena. She did not lose, but because her physical strength could not support her to continue fighting. Before leaving, she looked at Chu Qiu, who was still fighting, and then at Lin Sun, who had not been injured until now. A touch of unwillingness surged in her heart. Finally, she shook her head, sighed softly, and turned away. At this point, after winning 10 consecutive victories, only Chu Qiu and Lin Sun were left in the arena. Chu Qiu had won 33 matches. Lin Sun had also won 27 matches. At this moment, the shock in the hearts of the spectators could no longer be described with words. They really did not expect that in just the first round of selection, there would be such a stirring and shocking scene. Chu Qiu's strength was well-deserved. Jin Di's strength was unexpected and unbelievable. In the end, who will be defeated first? Everyone was nervously watching. Even Tao Songting, Madame Yu, and Hong Yu focused their attention on the arenas belonging to the two of them. This guy, where did he come from? At this point, Chu Qiu also felt exhausted. But what made him unwilling was that Lin Sun, who was on the other arena, had not been injured. In contrast, he was riddled with injuries. This was undoubtedly a huge blow. I don't believe it. Chu Qiu's eyes were red. He clenched his teeth and persisted. This was an invisible competition. With Chu Qiu's spirit, how could he be willing to be surpassed by others? The 34th match. The 35th match. What shocked the spectators was that Chu Qiu, who seemed to be at the end of his rope, actually defeated 2 more opponents in succession. His unyielding, tenacious fighting posture made many strong people tremble. Chu Qiu, Chu Qiu, Chu Qiu. It was unknown who let out a roar of encouragement, but it immediately ignited the emotions of the spectators. They all followed suit and shouted, cheering for him. Gu Jinxing, who watched all this from a distance, secretly clenched his fists. Gao Lingtian, who had already won 10 consecutive victories in another arena but did not continue to fight, could not help but feel annoyed. If he had known this, should he have also persisted? Zhuo Fengying, who was sitting cross-legged and recuperating, was in a complicated mood. Chu Qiu's performance made it difficult for her not to be convinced. However, even with the thunderous cheers, Chu Qiu still could not hold on. There was a limit to one's strength. At this moment, Chu Qiu had used up all his potential and squeezed out all his strength. Before the 37th match began, he only felt dizzy and realized that he really could not fight anymore. He resisted his exhaustion and turned to walk down the arena. When his eyes inadvertently saw Lin Sun, who was still fighting in the distant arena, a feeling of frustration, powerlessness, and depression surged in his heart. This guy, where did he come from? Seeing Chu Qiu's figure walking down step by step, the cheers of the audience stopped abruptly, and everyone showed complex emotions. Chu Qiu, after all, left one step earlier than Jin Dui. This made people feel inexplicably lost. And when people noticed Lin Sun, who was fighting in another arena, they were speechless and shocked. Because up until now, he had not been injured. Not even a piece of his clothes was torn. Many people could not help but have the same thought in their minds. Was this guy's body a bottomless pit? Otherwise, how could his physical strength be so strong? Although Chu Qiu took the initiative to give up the arena, it does not mean that he is not as good as Jin Dui. Someone shouted. Yes, Chu Qiu has won 36 matches in a row, while Jin Dui has only won 30. The gap is still very big. Let's see if he can break Chu Qiu's record. Many people also nodded. But to everyone's disbelief, in the following time, Jin Dui, who had been closely watched by them, continued to defeat challengers one after another. He was not injured, and he did not show any signs of strain. Later, the sound of the audience disappeared, and all eyes were focused on Lin Sun, watching him conquer on the arena like an unshakable mountain. The 34th match win. The 35th match win. The 36th match win. The 36th match win. When Lin Sun began to fight with the 37th opponent, the emotions that had been suppressed in the hearts of all the spectators for a long time burst out at this moment, because this already meant that he had broken Chu Qiu's record in the arena. I didn't expect that this dark horse could replace Chu Qiu. Does this mean that in the first round of selection, he can already be called the well-deserved first place? Tao Songting sighed. No, he can only be regarded as the first place in the selection of Lingfeng City. Madam Yu took a deep breath and corrected him in a serious manner. The first round of the selection wasn't just being carried out in Lingfeng City, and it was being carried out in many other areas of Cloud Prefecture as well. But even then, Madam Yu's words were equivalent to acknowledging the results Lin Sun had obtained in the Lingfeng Dao Development Reserve. Chapter 1976. When Lin Sun obtained victory in the 37th battle, the entire Dao Development grounds actually became unusually silent. Everyone was shocked, speechless. Even Tao Songting, Madam Yu, and the others couldn't calm down. Chu Qiu, who had the most outstanding and dazzling performance, stopped before the start of the 37th battle. Lin Sun's victory had broken Chu Qiu's record without any suspense, and he became the only one who had won 37 battles in a row and still persisted in the arena. This was something that no one had thought of before. Following that, the whole field was in an uproar. Jin Dui is too fierce. Someone shouted excitedly. Before the selection, Chu Qiu, Gu Jinxing, and Zhuo Fengying were the most favored among the powerhouses, but Lin Sun wasn't. But now, an unexpected figure like Lin Sun had defeated Gu Jinxing and broken the records of Zhuo Fengying, Chu Qiu, and the others. Who wouldn't be surprised and shocked? This dark horse was already surprising when he appeared, and now he has the domineering attitude of wanting to be the first. Who dares to believe it? Someone was in a trance. It's over. I bet Chu Qiu would be the first in the selection, and I bet all my belongings on it. Now, it's all over. Many people beat their chests and stamped their feet with sullen faces. At this time, Gu Jianxing, Gao Lingtian, Zhuo Fengying, and Chu Qiu, these dazzling figures, all had complicated expressions. They had calculated every opponent, but they hadn't expected that a ruthless figure like Jin Dui would appear out of nowhere. His invincible attitude was like a rider leaving the world in the dust. To them, it was far beyond their reach. Madam Yu, I'm worried that your Star Cloud sect won't be able to accept such a young man. Tao Songting sighed. Madam Yu's heart was in turmoil, and she said stubbornly, whether we can accept him or not, we have to go all out to fight for him. The others couldn't help shaking their heads. At this time, how could they not see that Jin Dui, who seemed to be an independent cultivator, was actually a monstrous figure from another world in the starry sky? Although the Cloud Star Divine sect was the second most powerful sect in the Cloud State, it would be difficult for them to accept such a monstrous person as their successor. The surroundings were stirred, and it pushed the atmosphere of the Tao discussion to the extreme. The gazes of practically everyone had converged onto Lin Sun, but he seemed to be completely unaware of it, and he stood on the arena and waited silently. It can't be. Is he going to continue fighting? Some of the spectators were shocked. A wave of restlessness swept through the crowd. I'm curious as to how long he can last. There were also many people who were excited, revealing looks of anticipation. In the participating area, the contestants felt bitter in their mouths. If Jin Dui did not leave, how could they have the chance to shine? But some people didn't believe it. They thought it was a good chance to make a name for themselves by challenging Lin Sun at this time. Even if he lost, people would still pay attention to him. If he won, his name would definitely resound through the heavens. It didn't take long for Lin Sun's 38th battle to begin. Without exception, Lin Sun still won this time. On the arena, he was terrifyingly steady like a divine mountain that remained immovable throughout the ages, and no one had been able to shake him until now. In the following period of time, numerous experts didn't believe it, and they charged onto the arena to battle Lin Sun. There were also some experts that had been defeated by Lin Sun, and they charged onto the arena once more after recuperating and accumulating energy, but unfortunately, all of them lost. Along with the beginning and end of these battles, clamorous noise and sounds of shock resounded incessantly in the Tao development grounds. But in the end, people were already numb from the shock. Lin Sun was too steady, and he gave others the feeling that he would never be defeated. During this entire process, countless people had guessed how many battles he would lose, but in the end, all of them were slapped in the face by reality. Time flew by. At the 10th hour after the Tao discussion began, Lin Sun obtained 50 successive victories on the arena. At the 14th hour, he obtained 68 successive victories. At the 18th hour, he obtained 84 successive victories. On the high wind Tao development grounds, the gazes of all the spectators were blank and their minds were numb. Shock, surprise, excitement, and disbelief. All of it was gone. Only a feeling of bewilderment remained. When Lin Sun obtained the 99th victory, even those participants in the participant area felt despair in their hearts. How could they continue fighting like this? Earlier, everyone thought that Jin Di would be unable to hold on due to exhaustion in the next moment, but every single time, they were proven to be wrong. Earlier, everyone thought that they would be the lucky fellow that had a chance to defeat Jin Dui, but in the end, all of them were suppressed and defeated. Up until this moment, these participants didn't dare hold any hope in their hearts, and for a time, no one rashly stepped forward to challenge Lin Sun, who was on the arena. The scene actually instantly became strangely silent. On the arena, Lin Sun stood alone, yet when he looked around, no one dared to step forward to challenge him. The spectators were in a trance. Who would dare claim to be the first in the high-wind Tao development grounds with Jin Di present? Time passed by bit. Battles were occurring ceaselessly on the other arenas, and only the arena Lin Sun resided and was silent, because there was actually not a single challenger. This was the power he'd established after obtaining 99 successive victories. Even Tao Songting, Madame Yu, and the others couldn't help but ponder. How many of the core disciples of the 7 major orthodoxies were capable of accomplishing this? This was only the first round of the selections. In the second round, what sort of shocking performance would Jin Duyi, the dark horse that came out of nowhere, display? Only Hong Yu was the calmest, because he knew very well that if Jin Duyi wanted to, he didn't have to participate in the first round of the selections. On the arena, Lin Sun waited for a long time, yet no one came to challenge him. So he immediately looked towards the other arenas. According to the rules, he could continue to accept challenges or challenge others on other arenas. Since no one came, then should I take the initiative? As soon as this thought arose in Lin Sun's mind, he noticed that the expressions of all the experts that were fighting on the other arenas had changed slightly. Brother Jin, I'm about to obtain 10 successive victories. Please show mercy. Someone was anxious. Brother Jin, everyone has already acknowledged your combat strength in the first round of the selections. You cannot give us a way out. Someone begged. For a time, all the experts that were fighting intensely on the arenas stopped what they were doing, and all of them revealed bitter expressions. All the spectators were astounded, and the hearts of the spectators were filled with sorrow. Look, Jin Duyi has terrified them to such an extent. The corners of Lin Sun's mouth twitched imperceptibly. In the end, he shook his head and said, "Forget it. All of you continue." As he spoke, he left the arena directly. Only then did the experts on the other arenas feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders, and they heaved a long sigh of relief. Only when they watched Lin Sun's figure vanish from the Tao development grounds did they restrain their thoughts and continue fighting. Jin Duyi finally stopped fighting. An uproar resounded in the Tao development grounds. It's lonely at the top. He can't find an opponent that can fight him any longer, so he can only leave. Someone sighed with emotion. This method of winning is the most terrifying. It's unshakable and invincible, and he can only choose to give up. I wonder exactly how far Jin Duyi can go when the second round of the selections begins. Someone revealed a hopeful expression. The curtains to the second round of the selections would be drawn on the Great Void Mountain where the Great Void Tao sect resided. At that time, the experts that stood out in the first round of the selections in different areas of Cloud State would participate in it. Moreover, the inheritors of the 7 great orthodoxies would appear at that time. At that time, it would be a true battle between dragons and tigers, and the Tao discussion and competition would be bound to be even more brilliant and worthy of yearning. At that time, no matter what price I have to pay, I'll go to the Great Void Mountain to see who exactly will defeat Jin Duyi. Many people decided in their hearts. 99 consecutive victories, such a record. Such a record can probably be counted on one hand in the first round of the selections in the entire Cloud State. Tao Songting, Madame Yu, Hong Yu, and the others had a strong premonition. Based on Jin Duyi's performance today, he was bound to not be mediocre at the beginning of the second round of the selections. The uproar and discussion in the Tao development grounds had nothing to do with Lin Sun. He'd left long ago and returned to the inn alone. The 99 battles he'd experienced today allowed him to witness the power of the great Tao possessed by 99 figures of the same realm, and he'd accumulated a great deal of comprehension in his heart. Therefore, as soon as he returned, he began to meditate. In his mind, Dong Liushui's phantom world of puppets, Wang Zhenyang's flawless defense, Gao Lingtian's purgatory of saber chant, Gu Jinxing's fire dragon sword screen. The forms, auras, and charms of various Tao domains all surged into Lin Sun's mind like a tide. Later, Jin Tian Xuanyue's White Emperor's City of Sword Domain, Quasi-Emperor Kong Yin's boundless thousand sword shadow, Quasi-Emperor Chu Rao's 36 Lotus Realms, Shiling's Hell Road of No Return. All the insights about the Tao domain turned into various comprehensions and integrated into Lin Sun's mind. The Tao domain. Based on the great Tao controlled by oneself, the power of the domain condensed was like opening up a world of great Tao. The higher the quality of the Tao domain, the stronger the cultivator's control of the power of the great Tao, and the more terrifying the power exerted in battle. As early as when Lin Sun stepped into the Saint King realm, He relied on his control of the power of the great Tao to condense a Tao domain, but it was only a vague prototype. It was also from that moment until now that he'd been constantly comprehending and studying the profundities of a Tao domain, and it was all for the sake of condensing an extremely perfect and unique Tao domain in the universe. Now, under the impact of all the insights accumulated in his mind, Lin Sun seemed to have an epiphany and naturally began to deduce and temper his own Tao field. Chapter 1977. Whem. The embryonic Tao domain that seemed like the chaos condensed before Lin Sun, and it sometimes transformed into a deep and boundless abyss, and sometimes transformed into an eternal divine furnace. The peerless laws of the grand Tao flickered and surged within it like divine chains of order. Star obliteration, true dragon, fire and water, eternal, Tai Chi. All sorts of magnificent phenomena appeared, and the aura they emanated was so magnificent that it was sufficient to make experts of the same cultivation feel despair. Lin Sun had set up restrictions within the room, so he didn't have to worry about being disturbed or being noticed by the outside world. At this moment, as Lin Sun circulated his cultivation, the Tao domain that seemed like the chaos started to rumble. It was like an artifact embryo was undergoing tempering and polishing. The various comprehensions in Lin Sun's heart fused into the Tao domain amidst this tempering. And then, his Tao domain instantly transformed into an immortal city that stood towering beneath the sky. It bathed in divine radiance, and its towering city tower was eternal and brilliant. It wasn't long before it transformed into a myriad of sword images that overlapped each other in a dense and seemingly endless manner. After that, it condensed into 36 lotus worlds, and every single lotus petal revealed the aura of a divine paradise. Shockingly, the various forms were Sword Domain Baidi City, Boundless World of Swords, and 36 lotus worlds. In the following period of time, Lin Sun's Tao domain revealed various forms in succession like the Flaming Dragon Sword Veil, the Nether Path of No Return, and so on and so forth. In the end, the various scenes returned to a state of chaos. It was also at this moment that the embryonic Tao domain that seemed like the chaos suddenly fell into extreme silence, and it floated there silently. On the other hand, all sorts of comprehensions seemed to have erupted completely in Lin Sun's heart, and it was practically driven by instinct as the tune of the Tao resounded in his heart. Bang! The embryonic Tao domain that had fallen into extreme silence started to undergo a shocking change, and it faintly transformed into a deep and enormous abyss. It was boundlessly large and boundlessly deep, and it seemed as if it could swallow the entire sky. But when one looked carefully, the abyss revealed the shape of a cauldron, and it was suffused with an eternal and condensed aura. It was like a furnace yet not a furnace, like an abyss, yet not an abyss. It seemed as if everything had returned to its original state, yet the feeling it gave others was a type of imposing aura of mastery, and it seemed as if it was completely formed by nature. As Lin Sun's mind turned, all kinds of great ways appeared in the Tao field, deducing infinite Taoism. There were real dragons roaring with their heads raised, water and fire flowing between heaven and earth, clear and turbidine, and yang qi hanging between heaven and earth, immortality and endless vitality spreading. A terrifying aura that could make even ghosts and gods tremble also spread out. Boom! The restrictive energy that enveloped the surroundings of the room was impacted, and it shook violently as if it was unable to endure the pressure of such a terrifying aura. A smile appeared on Lin Sun's face. The Tao domain that was in its nascent state was now perfected to the phenomenal success stage. Its power and quality were completely different from before. Crash! Lin Sun's mind stirred, and the Tao field suddenly disappeared. What a pity! I'm still a step away from perfection. Lin Sun pondered, however, it's enough. When I killed Quasi-Emperor Chu Rao, the embryonic state of the Tao field could erupt with such power. Now that the phenomenal success stage of the Tao field should be enough for me to be fearless of any competition with my peers. Lin Sun had never seen an extremely perfect Tao field, and he didn't know if there was a Tao field similar to the one he sought in this world. However, Lin Sun had a premonition that when the Tao discussion grand gathering held by the 6 major Tao courts began, perhaps there would be a peerless figure who could control such a Tao field. After all, it was not too much to overestimate the foundation of such a colossus like the 6 major Tao courts. While Lin Sun was meditating alone, it was already nighttime in Lingfeng City. The first day of the Tao discussion selection had ended. Among the thousands of participants, only 32 people had won 10 consecutive victories and successfully obtained the qualification to enter the second round of selection. It could be imagined how fierce and cruel the competition was. As for the losers, other than some size, no one cared about them anymore. The winner would become the most eye-catching and dazzling figure in Lingfeng City tonight. Lin Sun, Chu Qiu, Zhuofengying, Gu Jianxing, Gao Lingtian. One by one, the names set off countless sensations in Lingfeng City. Among them, the most eye-catching was Jin Dui, who was disguised by Lin Sun. A single person, winning 99 consecutive victories and fighting until the end, no one dared to provoke him. This is a true invincible demeanor. How powerful is Chu Qiu? How dazzling is Gu Jinxing? But after today's battle, he can only be overshadowed in front of Jin Dui. Who could have imagined this result? How should I describe this Jin Dui? One word: steady. Unshakable, invincible, terrifyingly steady. Damn it, if I knew this would happen, I should have bet heavily on Jin Dui. Similar discussions and uproars could be seen everywhere in Lingfeng City. Everyone who talked about the powerhouses of today's Tao discussion selection was bound to mention the name Jin Dui. In short, tonight, Jin Dui became completely famous. He amazed the world with a single brilliant feat, like a bright sun shining alone above Lingfeng City. In contrast, the other powerhouses who participated in the Tao discussion selection were overshadowed. Time passed by, and when the next day arrived, the Tao discussion selection continued in the Tao development grounds. However, compared to the first day, the battles that occurred on the 18 arenas on the second day seemed to be slightly lackluster. Actually, this was normal. Practically all the dazzling figures that received the most attention had smoothly advanced on the first day, and it caused the following Tao discussion selection to seem to be less exciting. Moreover, even though there were dark horses like Lin Sun, most of them chose to stop after obtaining 10 consecutive victories. Not to mention breaking Lin Sun's battle results, they seemed to be much inferior when compared to Chu Qiu, Zhuofengying, and the others. At the end of the second day, a total of 23 people had obtained 10 consecutive victories, and they possessed the qualifications to participate in the second round of the selection. On this night, the name that was discussed the most was still Jin Dui. Even if he didn't make an appearance at the Lingfeng Tao development grounds at all, he seemed to be like a benchmark now, and no matter which powerhouse was mentioned, that powerhouse would always be compared with him. Because of this, it caused everyone to have a deeper understanding of the weight of Lin Sun's 99 consecutive victories. On the third day, the curtains to the Tao discussion selection were drawn. Today was the last day of the first round of the selection. Earlier, regardless of whether they participated in the battles or lost, all the participating experts had exerted all their ability and strength. This caused the Tao discussion selection to be much more exciting and horrifying today. In the end, 17 people had obtained 10 consecutive victories, and coupled with the number of people that had advanced in the first 2 days, a total of 72 people possessed the qualifications to enter the second round of the selection. Even though 72 people seemed to be a lot, after all, it was selected from over 1,000 participants, and it was equivalent to eliminating almost 90% of the participants. It was also on this last day that Tao Songting, Madame Yu, and the other quasi-emperor realm figures jointly announced the name at the top of the first round of the Tao discussion in Lingfeng City. Jin Dui. The name at the top was the first, and it was the one and only that person who dominated the rankings. However, The first was only the first in Lingfeng City in the end. According to Lin Sun's knowledge, there were 10 such first in the Cloud Prefecture. Moreover, such a person was merely one of the participants in the first round of the Cloud Prefecture's Dao discussion. So, Lin Sun couldn't be said to be excited at all. When he participated in the Dao discussion, he didn't care about the outcome at all, and being able to obtain the first was both unexpected and within reason. However, Lin Sun's lack of excitement didn't represent that the others weren't excited. When this matter was announced, the entire Dao development grounds rumbled like a thunderclap, and it was filled with exclamations, sighs, admiration, so on and so forth. Even Tao Songting and the other sighed endlessly with emotion. Before this, who could have imagined that the first in the Dao discussion of Lingfeng City would actually be a dark horse that had appeared out of thin air? 99 consecutive victories. Such accomplishments in battle could already be considered as a magnificent feat that shocked the world. It was also on this day that the news of Lin Sun pretending to be Jin Di and becoming the first in Lingfeng City swept through the city like a storm and spread towards the surroundings. In the following period of time, the name Jin Di entered more and more cities in the Cloud Prefecture, and it was known by more and more cultivators. All of this was unrelated to Lin Sun. At this moment, he, Chu Qiu, Gu Jinxing, Zhuo Fengying, and the others were following Tao Songting and the others out of Lingfeng City. The curtains to the second round of the Dao discussion would be drawn in half a month from now. The venue was the #1 sect in the Cloud Prefecture, the Great Void Dao Mountain, the Great Void Dao sect. At that time, the experts that had advanced in the 10 areas of the Dao discussion of the Cloud Prefecture would converge together, and the second round of the Dao discussion would begin with the disciples of the 7 great sects. Young brother, so long as you're willing, then I guarantee that you'll immediately become a core disciple after you enter the sect. Moreover, you'll possess your own paradise for cultivation, and you'll be able to enjoy the support of 8 million Dao crystals and various cultivation resources every single year. Moreover, so long as you have any request, then no matter if I can agree to it or not, I'll do my best to help you strive for it. On the way to the Great Void Mountain, Madam, you had found Lin Sun, and she tried all means to draw him over to her side with the hope that Lin Sun would join the sect. Her attitude was extremely sincere and fervent, and it caused Chu Qiu, Zhuo Fengying, and Gu Jinxing to be unable to help but feel slightly jealous in their hearts. This was the treatment of the first in the rankings. It was both enviable and exasperating. But in the end, Lin Sun still refused. Of course, he knew that Madame Yu truly appreciated him, but his identity had already been determined, and it was impossible for him to join any other sect. Madame Yu was disappointed, but she forced herself to cheer up and said firmly, "No matter what, I'll continue to strive for it." Chapter 1978. The Great Void Mountain. Located in the northwest of Yinzhou, the Great Void Mountain was the place where the Great Void sect, the first orthodoxy in Yinzhou, was naturally a first-class blessed land. Beside the Great Void Mountain was the Great Void City, known as the first city in Yinzhou. It was extremely prosperous. With the opening of the Great Void competition in Yinzhou, the Great Void City became more and more lively. Every day, cultivators from all over the world came to the city. Although the city was large and occupied a large area, with the continuous influx of cultivators, the inns in the city became more and more difficult to find. Half a day after leaving Lingfeng City, Lin Sun and the others arrived at the Great Void City. As experts who were qualified to participate in the second round of the selection, the Great Void Dao sect had specially prepared residences for these experts in the city. When the second round of selection began, Lin Sun and the others would set off from the city and go to the Great Void Mountain, the Great Void City, in a quiet and tranquil courtyard. As the #1 in Lingfeng City, this courtyard was specially prepared for Lin Sun. Others could not enjoy such treatment. When the second round of selection begins, I will come to pick you up. During this period, you are free to do whatever you want. Tao Songting arranged everything and left in a hurry. Brother Lin, are you here? As soon as Lin Sun settled in the courtyard, someone came to visit him. Taoism Peer Gao, what's the matter? Lin Sun opened the door of the courtyard and saw Gao Ling Tian standing outside. There is still half a month before the second round of selection begins. Don't you want to take this opportunity to see the prosperity of the Great Void City? Gao Ling Tian asked with a smile. Although he was defeated by Lin Sun in the first round of selection, he was impressed by Lin Sun's strength, so he wanted to make friends with him. Oh, Brother Gao is here too. Before Lin Sun could reply, Chu Qiu, the descendant of Tianmong God Mountain, walked over with Gu Jianxing and Zhuo Fengying. Chu Qiu stepped forward and greeted Lin Sun and Gao Ling Tian. Then he said with a smile, I received the news that some of the top candidates in the first round of selection in Yunzhou are now gathered in the Zhongming Tower of the Great Void City. Furthermore, I've already received an invitation for all of us experts from the High Wind City to head over to the gathering. Really? Gao Ling Tian was surprised. Chu Qiu, Gu Jianxing, and Zhuo Fengying nodded in unison. In the Cloud Province, they could be regarded as the most dazzling figures of the younger generation, and each of them was a peak Saint King, so it was very common for them to be invited to such a gathering. Brother Lin, what do you think? Gao Ling Tian looked at Lin Sun. Since I have nothing better to do, I might as well take a look. Lin Sun said with a smile. Chu Qiu, Gu Jianxing, and the others also laughed. Like Gao Ling Tian, they had been convinced by Lin Sun's fighting power in the first round of selection. There's no time to lose. Let's go now. Chu Qiu led the way. On the way, Lin Sun learned that the first round of selection in Yunzhou was divided into 10 regions. High Wind City was one of them. Lin Sun was the top ranker of High Wind City's participant zone. In addition, in the other 9 regions, there was a champion like him. For example, the gathering held in Great Void City's Zhongming Tower was initiated by Su Muhan, the top of Songming City's participant zone. Su Muhan. He was a pure-blooded descendant of an ancient imperial family in Yunzhou, a peak Saint King. It was said that this person showed amazing talent when he was young and was unanimously favored by the 7 orthodoxies in Yunzhou. In order to recruit him, the 7 orthodoxies sent out their big shots countless times and almost broke the threshold of Fong family. But in the end, Su Muhan refused. Therefore, a dragon among men like Su Muhan appeared in the first round of selection. When mentioning Su Muhan, Chu Qiu, Gu Jianxing, and the others more or less showed a trace of fear. Yunzhou was very big, like a big world. Chu Qiu and the others were only famous in one region. But Su Muhan was different. His fame was quite dazzling in the whole Yunzhou, and he could be regarded as an outstanding talent in the same realm. According to Chu Qiu and the others, Su Muhan's power was even more tyrannical than many core descendants of the 7 orthodoxies. In this regard, Lin Sun's reaction was very calm, and he didn't say much. He just listened to Chu Qiu and the others' discussion with a smile. However, the more he heard, the more he remembered a few people. For example, Lan Yunke, the top of Water Sky City's participant zone. He grasped the realm of Tao, magical flower Aquarius. His fame was comparable to Su Muhan's. For example, Yu Qianxing, the top of Wind Rainbow City's participant zone. He grasped the realm of Tao, 9-colored Jade Hall, and was regarded as a rare soul cultivator. For example, Yin Xiangyi. They were all top figures in the other participant zones. They were dazzling, and they were already famous before the first round of the Dao discussion. Night fell. The Zhongming Tower, which occupied a large area and was 10,000 feet tall, was brightly lit. Countless servants and maidservants shuttled through the building like butterflies. When Lin Sun and the others arrived, many figures had already gathered in the highest hall of the Zhongming Tower. The top of the various participant zones and the descendants of the ancient aristocratic families were all present. The one in the middle is Su Muhan. Gao Ling Tian said with a voice transmission. Lin Sun looked up and saw a young man dressed in a bright yellow official robe. He had a high hat and a wide belt, and his face was as beautiful as jade. He sat high up in the middle, and as he looked around, he looked very elegant. Obviously, this person was the top of Songming City's participant zone, Su Muhan. Other than this, there were top figures from different participant zones sitting in other seats in the hall. There were men and women, and they occupied a corner of the hall. All of them had an astonishing aura. Under Gao Lingtian's guidance, Lin Sun also recognized the top figures of the various participant zones. For example, Lan Yunke, the top of Water Sky City's participant zone. He was dressed in a white robe, and his appearance was elegant and handsome. He waved his white feather fan, and he looked elegant and charming. Yu Qianxing, the top of Wind Rainbow City's participant zone, had a resolute and cold expression. His eyes were like blades, and his aura was terrifying. Every top figure had their own unique aura. Just sitting there without moving made it impossible to ignore their existence. Lin Sun only glanced at them and didn't care much about them. But when he saw Helian Qi, the top of Black Nightmare City's participant zone, his eyes narrowed slightly. It wasn't because Helian Qi was extraordinary, but because Lin Sun recognized the woman in black sitting next to Helian Qi at once. In the first round of Lingfang City selection, this woman in black had attacked Lin Sun with the God-slaying needle, but she was eventually seriously injured by Lin Sun. At that time, Lin Sun suspected that she was from the Dark World, but she shouldn't have recognized his identity. What Lin Sun didn't expect was that this woman in black would also appear. The woman in black also noticed Lin Sun, and resentment flashed in her eyes. Haha, Chu Qiu, Gu Jianxing, the experts of your Lingfeng City are finally here. In the center, Su Muhan stood up and greeted them with a smile. As soon as he moved, all the eyes in the hall gathered on Lin Sun and the others. For a moment, the originally lively atmosphere became much quieter. Greetings, Brother Su. Chu Qiu and Gu Jianxing also greeted him with a smile. Alas, I thought the top of Lingfeng City's participant zone would definitely be one of you two. Who would have thought that there would be a dark horse? As Su Muhan spoke, he looked at Lin Sun and Gao Lingtian. Brother Chu, which one is Jin Dui, who has won 99 consecutive victories? Quickly introduce him to us. 99 consecutive victories. Jin Dui. In the main hall, the top rankers of each battle zone and the other top experts had naturally heard about it. They came to the gathering this time because they wanted to see who exactly this Jin Dui was and whether or not he was worthy of his name. Brother Su, this is Jin Dui, Taoism Peer Jin. Chu Qiu stepped aside and introduced Lin Sun with a smile. Brother Jin's combat power is so strong that we are all amazed. Let's take advantage of this gathering to talk more. As his voice fell, all the eyes in the hall gathered on Lin Sun, showing curiosity, surprise, and contemplation. 99 consecutive victories. Such an amazing record was destined to be impossible to fake, but no one expected that Jin Dui would be so ordinary. He stood there like a stone, calm and dignified. Apart from that, there was nothing worthy of attention at all. Even Su Muhan was stunned, and then he said with a smile, Su Muhan, nice to meet you. Taoism Peer Jin. Your name is well known to all of us here. Please take a seat. As he said, he arranged for Lin Sun and others to take a seat, and there were waiters serving all kinds of tea and delicacies. Almost all the people present were practitioners in Yinzhou. Even if they hadn't seen each other before, they had heard of each other's reputation. Only Lin Sun, a figure they had never heard of before, now shown in the first round of selection in Lingfeng City and became famous, naturally attracted many people's attention. It didn't take long for some overmatches to come to toast and talk. Lin Sun drank with them one by one, neither humble nor arrogant. Chu Qiu and others couldn't help sighing with emotion when they saw this scene. This was the reputation condensed by 99 consecutive victories. Even if they had never seen or heard of him before, who wouldn't respect him now? If he was an ordinary person, how could he enjoy the treatment of being toasted by a group of top figures? Yinzhou was very large, with a vast territory. There were many forces and countless cities, but there were only 10 people at the top of the 10 battle zones. The most different thing about Jin Dui was that he had created an amazing record that was enough to make other top figures pay attention to. At least, among the top figures in the 10 battle zones, only Jin Dui had achieved such a record. Are you Jin Dui? While Lin Sun was drinking with others, a low and cold voice suddenly came from the side. Lin Sun looked up and saw Helian Qi, the top figure in the Heixia City battle zone. not far away. He looked down at him as if he was looking at an ant. Chapter 1979. A small bug appeared in Lin Sun's identity in yesterday's update. It has been fixed. It was Helian Chi who spoke. He wore a navy blue Taoist robe embroidered with pines, cranes, and clouds. Every move he made flowed with Taoist light and transformed into a deep ancient well that appeared behind him. Helian Chi was the #1 in Songming City. He controlled the Tao domain of the moon reflection ancient well. It was said that his Tao had merged with the land of the well. It was like being trapped in the mud at the bottom of the well. As soon as Helian Chi spoke, the surrounding people immediately shut up, and the lively atmosphere in the hall became quiet. The powerhouses who were toasting with Lin Sun also realized that something was wrong. They retreated in embarrassment, and many people revealed a look of awe. Brother Jean, Helian Chi, is a descendant of the Zhun clan of the primordial clan. He cultivates the Zhun Qi, and his cultivation is peerlessly powerful. He's not inferior to Su Muhan. Gao Ling Tian said quickly. Although the Zhun clan wasn't as powerful as the 7 orthodoxies of Cloud State, it was extremely ancient, and it was one of the orthodox demonic clans in the world. Helian Chi was a peerless figure of this clan, and he was now one of the top 10. Many powerhouses present were in awe of him. What's the matter? Lin Sun put down his wine cup and said indifferently. Helian Chi pointed at the woman in black and said, "She's my younger sister, Helian Rome. She was seriously injured by you in the first round of the Tao discussion. It's fine if it's like that, but you were too ruthless. Don't you think it's too much to injure my younger sister's Tao foundation?" His eyes were cold, and the Tao well behind him surged as if it wanted to devour souls. Everyone present was restless, and their eyes flickered. Everyone could see that Helian Chi wanted to get even with Jean Duyi. "Why don't you tell everyone that your sister was injured by me, because she attacked me with the God-slaying needle?" Lin Sun's expression was indifferent as usual. God-slaying needle. Many people revealed strange expressions. This incomparably vicious treasure could only be refined in the dark world. There's no rule against using treasures in the Tao discussion selection. Helian Chi snorted coldly, and his expression became colder. Lin Sun said casually, "There's no rule against injuring the opponent's Tao foundation. You want to denounce me just because your sister was injured?" Helian Chi's face stiffened, and his eyes were surging with killing intent. The reason why he stood out was that on one hand, on the other hand, on the other hand, on the other hand, and on the Tao. But he didn't expect Lin to be so tough. Seeing the conflict between Lin Sun and Helian Chi, Chu Chiu frowned and stood up, saying, "Helian Chi, this gathering is not for you to take revenge. Chu Chiu, stand to the side obediently. Even #1 spot has been taken by someone else. Where do you have a talk to me?" Chi. In the hall, peerless figures like Lan Yunke and Yu Qinxing wore playful expressions. It was obvious that they had no intention of interfering in this matter. In other words, they also wanted to use Helian Chi to test Lin's ability. Moreover, they were fearless. After all, this was the Yunzhou, their territory, and Jindi was said to be a lone cultivator. "Susu, Mu 11 Susu Mu sighed." Helian Chi said, "Sure, but I must make this Jindi bow his head and apologize first. Then, I will not make things difficult for him here for the time being." His words were overbearing. Su Muhan shook her head and stopped trying to persuade him. Although this gathering was initiated by him, he did not want to offend Helian Chi for Jean Dui. In comparison, Jean Dui was an outsider to the people present, while Helian Chi was a peerless figure of the Jinho clan in Yinzhou, who would interfere in Helian Chi's matters for an outsider. Lin Sun glanced around the field, but didn't look at Helian Chi. He said indifferently, "It's better that you don't intervene in this matter. If something happens later, whoever dares to stop me will be my enemy." His words caused many people to reveal strange expressions. This guy looked ordinary and mediocre, but he was actually very appetizing. Helian Chi couldn't help but laugh. "Jean Dui, #1 on the list with 99 consecutive victories. Do you dare to fight me?" His bearing was disdainful and arrogant. The atmosphere in the hall became somber. Lin Sun drank up the wine on the table, got up and said to Chu Qiu and others, "Such a gathering is too boring. I have to leave first." Chu Qiu, Gao Ling Tian, and others quickly stood up and said, "Brother Jean, if you want to leave, let's go together." They were also very unhappy in their hearts. "Want to leave? Have you asked for my permission?" Helian Chi's face darkened. "Oh," Lin Sun suddenly laughed. "You are the kind of person who doesn't know life from death, right? Don't know life from death." Helian Chi's eyes widened and his anger rose. He was a peerless figure of the Cloud State Jinho clan, and now he won the title of one of the top 10. Who dared to say this to him in the whole Cloud State? Lin Sun's words aroused the killing intent in his heart completely. The killing intent erupted like a volcano from Helian Chi's body. A Tao well condensed behind him, deep and profound, as if it was going to swallow people. "Be careful." Chu Qiu and others were nervous. They all knew that Helian Chi was extremely violent. No one could stop him as long as he took action. Lin Sun didn't say anything more. He just stretched out a big hand and pressed toward the void. Boom! An invisible and cryptic palm force suddenly descended, like an ancient divine mountain descending from the sky, pressing down on Helian Chi's body. Helian Chi sneered and shouted. His navy blue Taoist robe fluttered, and the Tao light roared and gathered. A Tao well behind him glowed and rushed up. Magic well trapping the sky. Helian Chi ran all his Taoism, intending to suppress Lin Sun on the spot with this blow. But it was beyond his expectation. That deep well only lasted for a moment before it exploded with a loud bang. Following that, an infinite and terrifying force pressed down, easily crushing the protective power on his body. With a loud bang, he was directly pressed to the ground. He threw himself to the ground. The ground of the hall shook violently. Everyone revealed serious expressions and were shocked. They all knew Helian Chi's strength. Helian Chi's power was tyrannical and unparalleled. He could become the top one in the first round of selection, which was enough to prove his strength. But now he was suppressed by one blow. Even if he was caught off guard, even if he underestimated Lin Sun, it was still too surprising that he was suppressed like this. Helian Chi was so ashamed and angry that he roared wildly. The rolling demonic chi, like dragons, emerged from his body and turned into an ancient well, exuding a terrifying aura. Unfortunately, not only did he fail to break free, but his body sank into the ground, leaving a human figure. Su Muhan, Lan Yunke, Yu Qianxing, and other top ones couldn't help but show a surprised look. Jin Duyi was so strong. Chu Qiu and others were relatively calm. Only they knew that if no one dared to challenge Lin Sun at that time, he would have achieved a higher record, let alone 99 consecutive victories. How could he, Helian Chi, provoke such a heaven-defying figure at will? There was dead silence. Not a single sound could be heard. Lin Sun looked down at Helian Chi and said, "If I want to leave, does it make any difference whether you agree or not?" His voice was indifferent. However, everyone's eyes had changed when they looked at him. They were both at the top of the list, yet Lin Sun had suppressed Helian Chi with a single hand. This caused their hearts to churn, and they were shocked. "Besides, your sister used the god-slaying spiritual needle. I doubt whether your Nightmare clan has colluded with the Dark World. If so, I'm afraid there will be no room for you in Yinzhou." After that, Lin Sun turned around and left. From beginning to end, he didn't bother to pay attention to the so-called peerless figures present. Chu Qiu and others also hurriedly followed him and left together. In the silent hall, it was not until a long time later that people seemed to come back to their senses, showing a complex expression. Jin Duyi, who had 99 consecutive victories, was so strong. At this moment, they finally realized Lin Sun's strength. But Helian Chi suffered. His defeat today not only made him lose face in public, but it would not be long before the whole Diyu city knew that he was suppressed. The most chilling thing was that Lin Sun's words before he left directly regarded Helian Chi as colluding with the Dark World. If this kind of words were spread, how would the cultivators of the entire Cloud Prefecture view the nightmare-suppressing clan? As expected, on the same day, what happened in Zhengming Tower spread and caused a sensation in Dayu City. One should know that the second round of selection was about to begin. Countless practitioners in Yunzhou had gathered in Dayu City. Right now, Helian Shi, one of the top 10, had been suppressed by Jin Dui, who was also the top one. How could people not be shocked? Jin Dui, a peerless figure with 99 consecutive victories, a mysterious rogue cultivator. His appearance is destined to cause many changes in the selection. Poor Helian Shi. His reputation as the top one that he had worked so hard to get was destroyed by Jin Dui. Quick, gather all the information on Jin Dui. I want to bet heavily on him. Dayu City was in an uproar. Everyone was discussing this matter. Dayu Dao sect, on a mountain specially prepared for guests. Even Helian Shi, this young man, is no match for him. Xie Yuhua, the core heir of the Cloud Star Divine sect, looked quietly at the news she had just received, revealing a look of surprise. Girl, did you see that? This Jin Dui is an incredible figure. Lady Yu said softly from the side. Lady Yu said softly. At the very least, his strength is definitely not inferior to yours. Xie Yuhua smiled and said, Isn't that even better? If the opponents are too weak, then this Dao discussion will be too boring. She wore a blue feather dress while her jet black hair was coiled into a bun, and it revealed a fair and beautiful face. Her eyes were brilliant like stars while strands of light blue light of the Dao coiled around her slender figure, causing her bearing to seem dreamlike and otherworldly like an orchid in a valley. You still don't understand. Chapter 1980. It was impossible to overestimate him. Xie Yuhua's eyes narrowed. If that's the case, I really want to see what Jin Dui is capable of. Does Helian Shi really think he can be arrogant just because he became the champion in the first round? Now he's being suppressed by a single hand. On another mountain peak in the Great Void Dao sect, a green-clothed boy chuckled. He looked like a young boy, but he carried a huge sword on his back. His eyes occasionally flashed with a chilling light. Wang Tu, the number 1 core disciple of the skyscraping sword sect, a peerless genius who cultivated the rebirth heaven-mending scripture. He looked like a child, but he was actually an extremely ferocious sword Dao sage king. Beside him, some core disciples of the skyscraping sword sect stood at the side with reverence on their faces. Wang Tu chuckled as he flipped through the news he had just received. This Jin Dui is quite interesting. To be able to win 99 consecutive victories in a battle between peers, he must be very lonely, right? The core disciples of the skyscraping sword sect looked at each other. Oh, if he meets me, I guarantee he won't be lonely. Wang Tu rubbed his chin with his small white hand and smiled innocently. However, the giant sword on his back constantly reminded the world that this fellow who looked like a child was not as simple as he seemed. A lone cultivator has such spirit. Does this mean that among the top 10 in the first round, the one we should pay the most attention to isn't Su Muhan, but Jin Dui? Lu Dubu revealed a look of surprise. His figure was thin, and he wore a wide-sleeved Confucian robe. He looked like a weak scholar, but his eyes were bright and deep. In the entire Cloud Prefecture, there were probably not many who did not know of Lu Dubu's name. He had displayed extraordinary talent since he was young, advancing bravely on the path of cultivation. He had fought countless battles and had never been defeated. Some busybodies believed that with Lu Dubu's talent, he could definitely be called the number 1 Sage King of the younger generation in Cloud Prefecture. However, the world probably did not expect that Lu Dubu, whose name shook the Cloud Prefecture, would actually look like a weak and delicate scholar. Senior brother, what you should be paying the most attention to isn't Su Muhan or Jin Dui. Instead, you should be paying attention to what rank you'll obtain after the Cloud State's Dao Discourse competition ends and head to the Middle Earth Dao State to participate in the Dao Discourse gathering organized by the 6 Dao Courts. Beside him, there was a beautiful girl with watery eyes and a sweet voice. She looked at Lu Dubu with a gaze filled with admiration. Lu Dubu was speechless, and he said with a smile, Junior sister, you think too highly of me. I'm afraid many formidable figures will emerge from the Cloud Prefecture's Tao discussion this time, but they are destined to be incomparable to senior brother. The beautiful woman said seriously. Lu Dubu smiled bitterly. You're blinded by a single leaf, unable to see Mount Tai. Who asked you to be so good-looking? Why would I want to see Mount Tai? The beautiful woman giggled. Lu Dubu was startled and immediately understood. Junior sister was comparing him to Liza. He was touched and said with a smile, "Forget it, I don't care about Su Muhan or Jin Dui. Junior sister thinks so highly of me, I definitely can't let you down. This Jin Dui who defeated Hellion Shi is the fellow who defeated the two of you back then." On another mountain peak, a black-robed young man sat casually. His entire body was surrounded by strands of gray mist, and his entire body seemed to have fused with the night. His skin was fair like jade, his facial features were sharp and angular, and his eyes were suffused with strands of chaotic gray luster. He sat there casually like the ruler of the darkness, and he emanated a terrifying aura. Shi Ling and Shi Zi nodded respectfully, and they sighed with emotion, because this black-robed young man was called Wu Huang, the last disciple of an emperor of the Divine Reflection ancient sect, a peerless, monstrous genius, and an emperor's apostle in name. In front of him, Shi Ling, Shi Zi, and the other oracle emissaries could only lower their heads. Early on, when he was at the peak of the Saint King realm, Wu Huang had once assassinated a quasi-emperor realm figure by himself. I know about this. If I find an opportunity, I will personally cripple him and take revenge for the two of you. After saying this, Wu Huang no longer paid attention to this matter. Shi Ling and Shi Zi looked at each other with gratitude and said in unison, "Thank you, Emperor Emissary." The news about the battle between Lin Sun and Hellion Shi appeared in the hands of many cultivators that night. Even the descendants of the 7 great orthodoxies were alarmed, like Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, Lu Dubu, and so on. But compared to the shock of others, the core descendants of the ancient orthodoxies, like Lu Dubu, were relatively calm. Like Jiang Heng and Ji Qian of the Xuanji Dao sect, when they heard the news, they all took it for granted. They had been in contact with Lin Sun for a long time, and they knew how terrifying Lin Sun's strength was. It would be a joke if he couldn't even beat Hellion Shi. "Where's Miss Xianhua?" Someone suddenly asked. "Oh, she left as soon as she learned that Brother Jean had arrived at the Great Void City." Someone said with envy. Xianhua was a pure-blooded descendant of the ancient emperor clan, the Jintian clan. Her status was so noble that she could be regarded as a top talent in the primordial world. But in front of Jin Duyi, she was as humble and obedient as a maid. How could this not make people sigh with emotion? The Great Void City. The night was as dark as ink. When Lin Sun returned to his residence, he was surprised to find that Xianhua in white, who looked like a fairy, had been waiting there for a long time. Child, when she saw Lin Sun, Xianhua showed a look of surprise and a brilliant smile that could make all living things fall head over heels. "Have you been waiting here for a long time?" Lin Sun asked with a smile. Xianhua said, "I just arrived. Let's go in and talk." How could Lin Sun not see that Xianhua had been waiting for a long time? He was rather moved in his heart as well. This genius of the Jintian clan was so proud and aloof. Yet when she treated him, she'd already become gentle and sweet like a precious daughter of a humble family. "Child, when I came here, Senior Hung, Xiao asked me to give you this news." After sitting in the courtyard, Xianhua took out a jade slip and handed it to Lin Sun with both hands. The jade slip recorded the list of disciples who would participate in the second round of selection from the 7 orthodoxies, and some peerless figures were highlighted. For example, Lu Dubu of the Great Void sect, Xie Yuhua of the Cloud Star sect, Wang Tu of the Sky-Reaching Sword sect, Wu Huang of the Mysterious Void Island, Yuan He of the Canaan Zen sect, and so on. Even the characters, cultivation, and past experiences of these peerless figures were recorded in detail. It could be seen that Heng Xiao, the headmaster of the Xuanji Tao sect, had spent a lot of effort in collecting this information. "Xianhua, when you go back, thank Headmaster Heng Xiao for me." Lin Sun took the jade slip and told her. Jean Tian, Xinhua nodded. Then, she took out the tea set and began to make tea for Lin Sun. She said, Child, Senior Hung, Xiao asked you to pay more attention to Wu Huang of the mysterious Void Island. He said that this person's origin is not simple, and it is very likely that he will take revenge for Shi Ling and Shi Zi in the Tao discussion of Yinzhou. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and suddenly understood. This Wu Huang should also be from the divine Sunshine Ancient Sect. After drinking the spiritual tea made by Xinhua herself, the two chatted for a while, and then she got up to leave. Lin Sun sent her to the door and watched her graceful figure gradually go away. Then he withdrew his gaze and said indifferently, sneaky and hiding, If you still don't come out, don't blame me for being rude. As his voice fell, the field was silent and no one answered. Lin Sun flicked his finger. Clang! A wisp of sword chi suddenly swept out and slashed into the shadows of the distant street. Clatter, a figure suddenly swept out of the shadows of the night and avoided the wisp of sword chi. He said in surprise, You can see through my whereabouts. What keen divine sense. It was a middle-aged man who was as thin as bamboo. His gray hair was tied up in a bun and his eyes were sunken. Although the aura around his body was extremely restrained, Lin Sun could still recognize in an instant that he was a quasi-emperor. As the skinny middle-aged man spoke, he waved his sleeve. Suddenly, the whole area was covered by a layer of restrictive power, and the outside world was isolated. Lin Sun felt strange. He had planned to do the same, but he didn't expect that the old guy would do it in advance. It seems that I have no way out today. Before we start, can you tell me who sent you here? Lin Sun asked. I'll tell you if you surrender. The skinny middle-aged man walked towards Lin Sun leisurely. Every time he took a step, the restrained aura around him was released a little bit. When he took 9 steps, his whole body was covered with dense black fog, and the horrible aura belonging to the quasi-emperor realm spread like a tide. Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of it and said, It seems that I can only start first and then talk. The skinny middle-aged man was a little surprised and frowned. You are so calm. Do you think there is someone in the great void city who can save you? Do you feel strange? Lin Sun smiled. If you surrender, I will tell you immediately. The skinny middle-aged man sneered. You are playing tricks. Swish! His figure suddenly disappeared, and the next moment he appeared in front of Lin Sun. He stretched out his right hand, and his skinny fingers were like 5 sharp blades, entwined with the terrifying power of the quasi-emperor law, and fiercely clawed at Lin Sun's throat. It was incredibly fast, fierce, and overbearing to the extreme. Even a lion would use all its strength to catch a rabbit. The skinny middle-aged man obviously knew that he could not delay, so as soon as he made his move, he used all his strength. He was confident that even the core descendants of the 7 major orthodoxies were doomed to be unable to withstand his blow, let alone Jean Dui. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was not the real Jean Dui. Just as the skinny middle-aged man's fingers reached out, a Tao domain that was like a furnace and also like a great abyss suddenly emerged. Whoosh! The skinny middle-aged man's full-strength attack seemed to have hit the chaos and failed. What surprised him even more was that his whole body seemed to have fallen into a great abyss and was fiercely wrapped by a terrifying, devouring force, falling into the boundless depths, as if to drag him into the depths of hell. Not good. The skinny middle-aged man's face changed dramatically. He never thought that, with his cultivation, he would be trapped unknowingly. Chapter 1981. A peerless holy king was able to silently trap a quasi-emperor who was attacking with all his might with the domain of Tao. This was undoubtedly too incredible. At least at this moment, the skinny middle-aged man was caught unprepared. What chilled him the most was that being trapped in this domain of Tao was like falling into a bottomless abyss. His whole body was imprisoned by the terrifying, devouring power. Even with the strength of a quasi-emperor, no matter how hard he tried, he could not break free. The skinny middle-aged man completely panicked. Was this the power that a peerless holy king could possess? Boom! Before he could think further, he felt his vision go black. The next moment, his whole body was ruthlessly pressed to the ground, blood spurting from his mouth and nose. When his vision became clear again, he saw that the power of the Tao domain was no longer there. There was only the young man named Jean Dui standing in front of him with his hands behind his back. He looked down at him with undisguised mockery in his eyes. The skinny middle-aged man was stunned, feeling an indescribable sense of absurdity. A quasi-emperor transcended the saint realm and was infinitely close to the emperor realm. Not to mention killing an ordinary holy king. Even killing a peerless holy king was a piece of cake. But now, the situation was reversed. A peerless holy king easily suppressed him, a quasi-emperor. If this got out, who would dare to believe it? Now, do you want to tell me who sent you here? Lin Sun spoke, his voice indifferent. Don't even think about it. The skinny middle-aged man shouted angrily. Crack! Lin Sun stepped out, and the bones and muscles of the skinny middle-aged man began to crack and burst into pieces. Blood gurgled out from his broken body. The sharp pain made his facial features contorted. Unfortunately, Little Silver is not here. Otherwise, it would not be so troublesome. Lin Sun murmured, but his eyes became increasingly cold. I'll ask you again, who sent you here? The skinny middle-aged man looked ferocious and said, Little bastard, kill me if you have the guts. In the future, there will be no place for you in Yinzhou. Bang! Lin Sun exerted force with the tip of his foot, shattering the heart meridian and spirit of the skinny middle-aged man. Before he died, the skinny middle-aged man looked shocked. He did not expect that Lin Sun would be so courageous, so obedient, and directly attack. You died with everlasting regret. Are you regretting that you didn't say a few last words? Unfortunately, I can't be bothered to continue listening. Although I don't know who you are, if you die, there will definitely be people who can't help but jump out. At that time, I will naturally know who sent you. Lin Sun said, and waved his sleeves. Crash, the skinny middle-aged man's corpse turned into ashes and was completely annihilated. After doing all this, Lin turned around and walked towards the courtyard. Bang! As he took a step forward, the restrictive power that covered this area collapsed and dissipated inch by inch like fragile glass. The night was as dark as ink, and all was silent. Lin Sun stood in front of the courtyard and waited quietly. After half an hour, Lin Sun suddenly disappeared in a flash. At the same time, a figure appeared in the distance, looked over for a moment, and then hurriedly left. This was a man in a gray robe. He was in a hurry, so he didn't notice that when he left, Lin Sun had already followed him silently. The Great Void City was huge, and the gray-robed man was extremely vigilant. After circling many streets, he finally turned into an area filled with ancient buildings. Finally, he came to the front of a courtyard and flashed in. Seeing this scene from a distance, Lin Sun showed a cold smile at the corner of his mouth. He didn't investigate further and turned away. My friend, sorry to disturb you. May I ask who lives in that courtyard? On the way, Lin Sun stopped a practitioner and asked, Dude, you don't even know this? That's the residence of Hellion Shi, the top disciple of Dark Nightmare City. The practitioner said disdainfully. Lin Sun smiled and didn't care about his attitude. He thanked him and floated away. Hellion Shi, it's really this guy. On the way back, Lin Sun had figured out. Hellion Shi was defeated by him with one blow in the Jingming Tower today, which could be said to be a disgrace. It was reasonable for Hellion Shi to send someone to take revenge. When the Tao discussion is over, you'd better not let me catch you. A murderous intent flashed in Lin Sun's heart. At the same time, in the courtyard where Hellion Shi was. Young master, bad news, Elder Jean is missing. The gray-robed man who had been followed by Lin Sun all the way reported in a panic after entering the courtyard. Hellion Shi, who was drinking and waiting for the news, was stunned. Missing. The gray-robed man nodded. I suspect that Elder Jean might have met with an accident. Crack. The wine glass in Hellion Shi's hand fell to the ground, but he didn't seem to notice it at all. He only felt his hands and feet were cold. A quasi-emperor was killed silently? Could it be that there was an expert beside Jean Dewey? When you came back, did you notice if someone was following you? Hellion Chi suddenly realized one thing. The gray-robed man shook his head. I deliberately took a detour around the block for a long time, but I didn't notice anything wrong along the way. Hellion Chi's expression was uncertain, and he was a little fearful in his heart. Would Jean Duyi suspect him for tonight's matter? Even Elder Jean was in trouble. If Jean Duyi wanted to deal with him. At the thought of this, Hellion Chi's heart became heavier. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said, "This matter ends here for the time being. When the Tao discussion is over, I will find Jean Duyi to settle the score." After returning to his residence, Lin Sun began to meditate as if nothing had happened. From this day on, Lin Sun no longer went out. He either meditated, studied the scripture of herbs in heaven, or figured out martial arts. As the time of the second round of selection approached, the great Void City became more and more lively, and cultivators could be seen everywhere. It was no exaggeration to say that during this period of time, the eyes of the entire Yunzhou had begun to focus on this place. The top 10 must have a great chance to pass the second round of selection. As for the others, it's hard to say. What's more worth paying attention to are the core descendants of the 7 orthodoxies. Those peerless figures are all amazing. It's said that the second round of selection will be held in the Great Void Tao Refining Pagoda. This pagoda is the treasure of the Great Void Tao sect. It's not just the treasure of the sect. It's been rumored for a long time that the Great Void Tao Refining Pagoda was obtained by the founder of the Great Void Tao sect from an unknown place. Its origin is extremely amazing. In the streets and alleys, in the tea houses and restaurants, people were discussing things related to the second round of selection. In the midst of these discussions, the day of the second round of selection came. On this day, at the first glimmer of dawn, Tao Songting, the elder of the Great Void Tao sect, came to summon Lin Sun and the other expert from the Lingfeng City Theater of Operations. Today is the day of the second round of selection. The selection will be held at the top of the immortal martial peak of the Great Void Tao sect. As Tao Songting spoke, he led Lin Sun and the others straight out of the Great Void City to the Great Void Mountain, which was far away from the city. At the same time, experts like Su Muhan, Lan Yunke, Yu Qianxing, and Hellion Chi, who had come from other theaters of operations, were also brought to the Great Void Mountain. The Great Void Mountain was known as the first-class blessed land in the Yunzhou. The mountain rose and fell continuously, stretching between heaven and earth, vast and majestic. One could clearly see the rolling divine light falling from the sky. Thousands of auspicious lights poured down, making the mountain seem to be bathed in a sacred aura, eternal and immortal. Just by looking at this scene, Lin Sun could tell that the divine wind Taoist mountain where the Xuanji sect was located was slightly inferior. The Great Void Tao sect deserved to be the first orthodoxy in the Yunzhou. Led by Tao Songting, the group smoothly entered the mountain gate. After flying for a while, they finally arrived in front of a majestic and beautiful mountain. Obviously, this was the immortal martial peak that Tao Songting mentioned. At the top of the immortal martial peak, there was a floating jade platform built with divine iron and jade. It covered an area of tens of thousands of meters, looming in the sea of clouds, like the residence of immortals. When Lin Sun and the others arrived, the successors of the 7 orthodoxies participating in the second round of selection had already gathered on the huge jade platform. They were the Great Void Tao sect, the divine sect of Cloud Star, the Xuanji sect, the mysterious Void Island, the Canaan Zen sect, the Yi Yuan Sword Tower, and the Fengxia Spirit Mountain. Under Tao Songting's guidance, Lin Sun and the others were arranged to one side of the jade platform. Stand here and don't move. The headmaster of the Great Void Tao sect will announce the second round of selection later. Tao Songting warned him with a solemn expression before he turned around and left. Brother Jean, look, that's Lu Dubu, the current top disciple of the Great Void Tao sect, a legendary figure whose name is known throughout the Yunzhou. Gao Lingtian's eyes were bright, filled with eagerness to fight. Following his gaze, Lin Sun saw that in the area where the successors of the Great Void Tao sect were gathered, a man dressed in a robe with large sleeves, stood there like a weak scholar. He looked gentle and calm, but the successors of the great Void Tao sect were gathered behind him, making him look like a moon surrounded by stars. He looked extremely outstanding. His chi is contained, his spirit and will are connected. This person clearly shows signs of breaking through the realm. It seems that he has suppressed the power to break through in order to participate in the Tao discussion. At a glance, Lin Sun could tell that Lu Dubu was extraordinary. He had to admit that Lu Dubu was indeed extraordinary. He deserved his reputation. Brother Jean, look, that's Xie Yuhua of the divine sect of Cloud Star, Wang Tu of the skyscraping sword sect, Shui Kongjia of the Xuanji sect. Gao Lingtian's eyes became brighter and brighter, as if he had seen a legendary figure. There was even a hint of excitement in his voice. Lin Sun followed his gaze and recognized those extraordinary figures with amazing reputations one by one. Xie Yuhua's dreamy temperament and Wang Tu's childlike appearance both left a deep impression on Lin Sun. When he looked at the place where the successors of the mysterious Sky Island were, Lin Sun's eyes immediately fell on a black-robed young man. This person was extremely tall and dignified, with a languid bearing. His whole body was surrounded by wisps of gray mist, and his white skin was like beautiful jade. His face was aloof and cold. Beside him, Shi Zi, Shi Ling, and the others became dim, like a group of green leaves reduced to a contrast. Wu Huang. Chapter 1982. Wu Huang. Just by looking at Shi Zi and Shi Ling's respectful attitude in front of him, Lin Sun could tell that this person's position in the divine Sunshine Ancient sect was bound to be extremely high. Whoosh! Almost at the same time as Lin Sun looked over, Wu Huang also looked at Lin Sun, and their eyes collided in the air. Wu Huang's gray-brown eyes were filled with a frightening light, as if he wanted to see through all the secrets of Lin Sun. If it was any other cultivator, merely such a gaze would terrify them to the point their hearts trembled, and they trembled with terror and terror. But Lin Sun looked indifferent, as if he didn't feel it, and withdrew his eyes. Kingmaker, he is Jin Dui, Shi Ling transmitted from his side. Her expression was cold. Wu Huang nodded expressionlessly and said, "He looks ordinary, but he is actually a hidden character. No wonder he could defeat you two so easily." His words made Shi Ling and Shi Zi's faces stiffen. At the same time, Lin Sun also saw Jiang Heng, Ji Qian, Jintian Xianyue, and others, but they just signaled each other with their eyes and didn't greet each other. In the face of a descendant of the Seven Orthodoxies, Chu Qiu, Gu Jianxing, Gao Lingtian, and others were more or less excited and eager to have a try. They were the top figures who stood out in the first round of selection, but whether it was foundation, reputation, or influence, they were far inferior to Lu Dubu, Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, and other peerless figures in the whole Yinzhou. Now that they were going to compete with each other, it was inevitable that they were a little excited. Not only them, but also the strong people from other battlefields, such as Su Muhan, Lan Yunke, Yu Qianxing, Helian Qi, and others. At the same time, the descendants of the Seven Orthodoxies were also looking at the people selected from the 10 battlefields. But the focus of their attention was only on the top 10. That is Su Muhan, a genius who refused the recruitment of the Seven Orthodoxies when he was young. His foundation is extremely terrifying. Lan Yunke controls the realm of Tao, Fahua Aquarius, which is extraordinary and can't be underestimated. Ladies and gentlemen, don't underestimate Yu Qianxing. His 9 colors Jade Hall is incomparably marvelous, and he's a soul cultivator who's rarely seen. Look, that guy is Jin Di, a dark horse whose name wasn't known before the Tao discussion selection, but now he possesses an extremely great reputation. Last night, it was him who defeated Helian Qi, the #1 figure, in a single move in Zhengming Tower. So he's Jin Duyi. The successors of the Seven Orthodoxies were discussing in low voices. As for Lu Dubu, Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, and other peerless figures of the Great Orthodoxies, they paid the most attention to Su Muhan and Lin Sun. Su Muhan's name had already spread across the Yinzhou. He was truly a dazzling figure. His foundation was so solid that he was even stronger than many of the core successors of the seven orthodoxies. This naturally attracted a lot of attention. Jin Dui, who was disguised by Lin's son, was a dark horse who had recently risen to power. He had 199 consecutive victories and even suppressed Hellion Chi, who was also on the top of the list, with a single move. It was hard not to pay attention to him. This person didn't deliberately hide his incompetence, but his cultivation has reached an extremely high level. That's why he has a plain and unremarkable feeling of divine things conceal themselves, and people are like unpolished jade. Lu Dubu also noticed Lin's son. After a slight shock, he seemed to be lost in thought. I hope he'll be like what lady you said, and it's not too much to overestimate him. Xie Yuhua's dreamy eyes were filled with ripples of luster. I still think that this guy must be very lonely in his heart. With a huge sword on his back, Wang Tu, who looked like a child, smiled innocently. At the same time, many people were also looking at Lin's son intentionally or unintentionally. In this regard, Lin's son had been very indifferent and calm, until he noticed that Hellion Chi, who was not far away, also looked at him. Lin's son's lips curled up into a smile, and he suddenly transmitted his voice. Last night, an old guy suddenly came to visit me. Do you know about it? Hellion Chi was stunned, and then his face became gloomy. Jin Dui, what are you talking about? Why can't I understand? Lin's son said casually, it doesn't matter if you don't understand. I just want to say that the old guy died in an ugly way. Hellion Chi's killing intent surged in his heart, and he almost couldn't control it. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, Jin Dui, I won't forget the shame of yesterday. His voice was gloomy and full of killing intent. Lin's son replied lightly, I'll wait for you. After that, he didn't look at Hellion Chi again. Clang! The sound of the law bell rang out on the jade platform at the top of the immortal Martial Peak, drifting and spreading. The atmosphere suddenly became solemn and solemn. All eyes turned to the center of the jade platform, where the headmasters of the seven orthodoxies were standing. The leading old man wore a high hat and ancient clothes. He looked thin, and when his eyes opened and closed, there was a grand illusion like the starry sky. This person was the headmaster of the great Void Dao sect, Guan Su. Many years ago, there were rumors that Guan Su had entered the Emperor realm in one step, and his foundation was unfathomable. The second round of selection will be held in the Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda. This pagoda is divided into 9 levels, and every level has a refinement path fighting soul. All you participants have to do is defeat these refinement path fighting souls and reach the 9th level of the Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda. The time limit is 30 minutes. Those who don't reach the 9th level after 30 minutes will be disqualified. Guan Su's voice was deep and resonated throughout the place. Many of the participants tensed up, but there were also many who were eager and looking forward to it. Then, Guan Su waved his sleeve. Boom! A pagoda descended from the sky. It was azure in color, and it was simple and magnificent. Chaotic chi flowed around the pagoda's body, and it emitted billions of divine lights. Everyone couldn't help but be shocked. The Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda. The Great Void Dao sect's ultimate treasure. It was said to be an ancient treasure born from an unknown place. It was mysterious and powerful. At this moment, even the sect leaders of the other orthodoxies couldn't help but exclaim. The Great Void Dao sect was regarded as the top orthodoxy in Yinzhou, and this treasure played a huge role. In the end, the Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda grew to a height of 10,000 feet. It stood above the clouds, and a door slowly opened at the bottom of the pagoda. Go! Guan Su announced. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Before he finished speaking, some participants couldn't help but charge into the pagoda. Their figures quickly disappeared into the door. Lu Duvu, Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, and the rest from the seven orthodoxies, Lin Sun, Su Muhan, Lan Yunka, and the rest from the 10 battle zones. There were more than 900 people who charged into the Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda. Finally, with a loud rumble, the door at the bottom of the pagoda closed. Chi! Guan-Su raised his hand, and a joss stick was lit in the air. It emitted wisps of smoke. This meant that the second round of selection had begun. When the joss stick burned out, it would take about 2 hours for the second round of selection to end. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on the Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda. I wonder which participant will be the first to reach the 9th level of the pagoda and become the champion of the second round of selection. Actually, the ranking doesn't matter. What's more important is how many participants will emerge victorious in this round of selection. Based on my calculations, there won't be more than 50 people. The 7 orthodoxies, as well as some of the important figures from the ancient clans who had come to watch the selection, had all taken their seats on the cloud platform and were waiting for the results. Everyone, the difficulty of this challenge is not simple. Guan-Su smiled. There are 9 levels in the pagoda, and each level is more dangerous and difficult than the one before it. A long time ago, when I was at the Absolute Sage King Perfection stage, I personally challenged this pagoda. It took me almost 45 minutes to reach the 9th level. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. One joss stick's time was 2 hours. 2 hours was 2 hours. 45 minutes was 1.5 hours. Guan-Su was the sect leader of the Great Void Path sect. Back when he was at the Absolute Sage King realm, he had taken this long to pass the 9th level of the pagoda. Based on this comparison, the participants had to at least have the same combat power as Guan-Su back then to pass the second round of selection. If they were any weaker, they would be in danger. However, there are many powerful figures among the participants this time. They are much more outstanding than I was back then. As for how many will emerge victorious in the end, I can't say for sure. However, the more it is like this, the more I look forward to it. As Guan-Su spoke, he waved his sleeve. Whoosh! The Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda glowed and formed a huge light screen. On the light screen, the scene that was taking place in the pagoda was displayed. More than 900 participants were all on the first level. It seemed like they were all together, but in reality, they were in different secret realms. This was also the mystery of the Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda. When challenging the levels, every participant was fair and would not be disturbed by others. Therefore, one had to defeat the Refinement Path Fighting Soul on each level in order to advance to the next level. In an instant, everyone's attention was focused on the huge light screen. Even a chatter had lessened. At the same time, in the Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda, the first level, the golden desert stretched on endlessly. A scorching storm swept across, raising sand and dust all over the sky, making a whimpering sound. The yellow sand swept across the sky, and it was as cold as a knife. Standing in it was like being exposed to the scorching sun. The intense heat caused the void to distort. This was the first level of the Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda, the Yellow Sand Secret Realm. Standing in it, Lin Sun could keenly feel that this secret realm was filled with a violent and terrifying aura that raged like the wind. However, this aura could not affect him. He rose into the air and swept forward. In the jade slip given by Hung Shao, the leader of Xuanji Taoism sect, there's also some information about the 9th level of the Great Void Path Refinement Pagoda. Therefore, Lin Sun was very clear that in order to pass the Yellow Sand Secret Realm and enter the second level of the pagoda, he only needed to kill 9 Refinement Path Fighting Souls. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Just as Lin Sun moved, rolling yellow sand rushed up for the ground and condensed into a figure. Its whole body seemed to be made of gold, emitting a dazzling golden luster. Refinement Path Fighting Soul. The aura emitted from its body was even more terrifying. It was comparable to the peak of the Saint King realm. As soon as it appeared, the desert was in turmoil, as if a god of the sand had descended to the world. Thanks again to Xia Ji for her monthly ticket reward. She single-handedly defended the first place of the top talents. Chapter 1983. Boom! The Refinement Path Battle Soul, formed from countless golden grains of sand, was like a huge golden god of war as it charged over. A terrifying battle aura wreaked havoc like a hurricane. It was clearly not a living creature, but it actually controlled an extremely shocking Tao and technique. Just like at this moment, it smashed out with a fist that was like a muddy yellow dragon, and it roared as it emanated a peerlessly violent and destructive force. Vaguely, there were vague signs of a Tao domain forming. This surprised Lin's son. According to his understanding, the refinement path battle soul was formed from a mysterious power that the great void refining Tao pagoda possessed. But now, this refinement path battle soul was about to become a living person. Bang! While Lin was thinking, he pushed out his palm and smashed the opponent's fist energy easily. Then he flashed and appeared in front of the opponent, raising his fist and punching. With a dull explosion, the alchemy fighting soul, which was as powerful as a holy king, was smashed by Lin Sun's fist like a piece of paper. In the splashing yellow sand, Lin Sun frowned. He was keenly aware that there was a mysterious force integrated into this world after it dissipated. That should be the power of the great void, refining Tao pagoda. Lin Sun was lost in thought. Without any delay, he continued on his way. In the blink of an eye, a refinement path fighting soul was formed in the midst of the yellow sand. Boom! Its aura was monstrous as it stepped through the air. This time, Lin Sun grasped with his palm and fingers, operating the power of the Tao field at the advanced level. His palm was like a deep and boundless abyss, and suddenly grasped the refinement path fighting soul. Bang! The golden body of the refinement path battle soul exploded, turning into yellow sand. At the same time, an obscure and mysterious force was devoured by Lin's palm power before it could integrate into this world. Then, a strange heat flow turned into pure mysterious power and poured into Lin Sun's body. With a thought, Lin Sun ran the method of tempering the five viscera. The mysterious force immediately flowed into the palace in his heart. The divine fetus of red fire, which had been nurtured there, improved a little at a speed visible to the naked eye. What sort of energy is this? It's actually able to produce such a shocking and miraculous effect on the tempering of Tao arts. Lin Sun was moved at once. Cultivation needed to be tempered and improved with the help of spirit qi and divine medicine. The great Tao required one to comprehend the power of the great Tao in order to control it. Martial Tao required reference to Taoist scriptures, and one had to rely on one's own comprehension to temper and improve. Lin Sun had never heard of any kind of power that could be directly used to improve the cultivation of martial arts. This was unbelievable. Perhaps this mysterious force came from the great void, refining Tao pagoda. Lin Sun's black eyes brightened. He didn't have any extravagant expectations for participating in the second round of the test. He just wanted to pass the test within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. But now he had discovered an opportunity. By killing a refinement path battle soul, one could obtain a mysterious power that could raise one's martial cultivation. Go! Lin Sun continued forward. When he encountered the third refinement path battle soul, he did not hesitate to do the same. While killing the opponent, he used the power of the Tao domain to devour the remaining mysterious power. Indeed, in the deity palace in his heart, the tempering of the scarlet fire divine fetus had improved a little. If this goes on, I might be able to form the scarlet flame Taoist body when I reach the 9th level. Lin Sun was thrilled. He didn't waste any more time and advanced with all his might. Inside the great void, refining Tao pagoda. It was also the first level of the Yellow Sand Secret Realm. Lu Dubu's figure flickered, and his speed was unbelievably fast. Along the way, whenever a refinement path battle soul stood in his way, he would kill it with a wave of his sleeve. He didn't even bother to look at it, as if he was in a hurry. As the first successor of the Great Void Tao sect, Lu Dubu knew that after killing a refinement path battle soul, he would be able to absorb a mysterious power that had an extremely magical effect on the improvement of martial arts. But Lu Dubu didn't care. Or rather, he didn't care about the refinement path battle soul on the first level. His goal was to reach the 9th level in the shortest time possible and then hunt for the refinement path battle soul on the 9th level. This was because only the 9th level refinement path battle soul would have the strongest and most shocking mysterious power. This was the benefit of being the successor of the Great Void Dao sect. He could know some insider information that others didn't. It seemed like a fair competition, but in reality, there were still differences. This power is really interesting. At the same time, Xie Yuhua's eyes lit up. She had also acutely sensed the wonders of the mysterious power. Haha, it's good for the improvement of martial arts. The Great Void Refining Path Pagoda is indeed a treasure that was born from an unknown place. I have to hurry and collect it. As time passed, people like Wang Tu, the successor of the skyscraping sword sect, Yuan He, the successor of the Canaan Zen sect, and other peerless cultivators also sensed the existence of the mysterious power after killing the refinement path battle soul. In an instant, these peerless cultivators were tempted and started to collect it with all their might. As for most of the other cultivators, they didn't notice this at all. It wasn't that they didn't have good eyesight, but with their strength, they already felt pressured when killing the refinement path battle soul. Who would have thought that after the refinement path battle soul died, there would still be some mysterious power left behind? On the Jade platform, at the peak of the immortal Martial Peak, the influential figures who had been paying attention to the movements in the Great Void Refining Path Pagoda also noticed something strange and started to ponder. Brother Guansu, what are these young people collecting? Someone couldn't help but ask. Many people were curious as well. Guansu didn't hide anything. He smiled and said, "This is the source of martial arts. It's a mysterious power that exists in the Great Void Refining Path Pagoda. If one can absorb it, it can improve and nourish one's martial arts cultivation." Everyone present couldn't help but gasp. A power that could improve one's martial arts cultivation? That was too rare, and its value was immeasurable. Brother Guansu, you're really generous. Many people exclaimed. Guansu said calmly, "These disciples are the strongest in Yinzhou after all. They are qualified to participate in the second round of selection, which shows how extraordinary they are. Now, I'm just taking out some opportunities. Treat it as a gift that the Great Void Sect has prepared for these young people." His speech was beautiful and full of vigor. This was the foundation of the top orthodoxy in Yinzhou. Even the influential figures present couldn't help but admire him. Look, it's only been a while, and Lu Dubu is the first to enter the second level. Someone exclaimed in shock. Instantly, everyone's gaze was attracted to the huge light screen. Lu Dubu was indeed ahead of everyone else. He charged into the second level of the pagoda like a horse leaving the dust behind. After him, it wasn't Xie Yuhua or Wang Tuesday. It was Wu Huang from the mysterious Divine Island. This surprised many influential figures. The way they looked at the island lord of the mysterious Divine Island, Taoist Lan, had changed. One should know that the mysterious Divine Island was only ranked 4th among the 7 orthodoxies in Yinzhou. There were many outstanding descendants, but most of them were slightly inferior to the likes of Xie Yuhua and Wang Tuesday. But now, Wu Huang from the mysterious Divine Island was right behind Lu Dubu. Even Xie Yuhua and Wang Tu were slightly inferior. Of course, this was only a competition of speed. It didn't represent their full strength. Even so, Wu Huang's performance was already shocking. Everyone look at Jin Dui. Although his speed is fast, it's not outstanding. I really don't know how he obtained 99 consecutive victories. Could it be that he doesn't live up to his reputation? Taoist Lan from the mysterious Divine Island suddenly said with a hint of mockery. Originally, the influential figures didn't care much about commenting on a junior. But unexpectedly, Heng Xiao from the Xuanji sect suddenly said, "Taoist Lan, the selection has just begun. I'm afraid it's too early for you to say that." His voice was indifferent, but it revealed a sense of confrontation. Taoist Lan sneered, "Oh, then I really want to see how amazing Jin Dui's performance will be." Heng Xiao was expressionless. He couldn't be bothered. Everyone present was used to it. They were well aware of the grudges between the Xuanji sect and the mysterious Divine Island, so they weren't surprised. Lin Sun, who was in the pagoda, had already entered the second level, Lava's secret realm. This was a fiery red world. Rivers of lava crisscrossed and surged, setting off tongues of fire that burned the universe. The martial souls of refinement path that were distributed here were like lava giants. Regardless of momentum or combat power, they were much stronger than the martial souls of the first level. To pass this round, one needed to kill 8 martial souls of refinement path. Unfortunately, it was still not enough for Lin Sun. He attacked all the way with irresistible force and almost finished off his opponents with a single move. In the end, he obtained a total of 8 martial source forces. Feeling the obvious transformation of the Scarlet Fire Taoist embryo in the Taoist Palace in his heart, Lin Sun was quite excited. He didn't expect to encounter such a miraculous opportunity in the second round of selection. He didn't spend any more time thinking and stepped into the third level. However, he wasn't the first to enter the third level. Before him, Lu Dubu, Wu Huang, Xie Yuhua, and the others had already arrived. The reason was that Lin Sun was still experiencing the changes of the Scarlet Fire Taoist embryo, and he didn't care about competing in speed. All his thoughts were on clearing the levels and collecting martial source forces. 15 minutes, 19 have reached the third level. Outside, an influential figure made an accurate judgment. The people nearby also revealed strange expressions. Among the 19 people, there were successors of the 7 orthodoxies, as well as top figures from the 10 participating areas, such as Su Muhan, Jin Dui, and Lan Yunka. The other 900 people were mostly distributed in the first and second level. Among them, there were 400 people stuck in the first level. According to the estimation of the influential figures, the majority of the strong people stuck in the first level were going to be eliminated. As time passed, Lu Dubu's performance attracted the attention of all the influential figures. Lu Dubu has reached the 4th level. He is the first to reach the 5th level again. The 6th level. When close to half an hour had passed, when they saw Lu Dubu charge into the 6th floor in a manner far ahead of everyone else, many of the important figures were shocked, and they were stunned. Chapter 1984. In less than half an hour, he rushed to the 6th floor. From the looks of it, Lu Dubu was indeed in the lead, leaving everyone in the dust. When he reached the 6th floor of the Great Void Path Pagoda, Wu Huang, Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, Yuan He, Su Muhan, and a dozen other peerless figures were still fighting on the 5th floor. On the 4th floor, there were about 40 people, including Helian Shi, Lan Yunka, Yu Qianxing, Chu Qiu, Gu Jianxing, and other powerful figures. On the 3rd floor, there were about 400 people. On the 1st and 2nd floors, there were about 200 people respectively. The situation was clear. The bigwigs present could see it clearly. Half an hour had passed. Those who were still on the 1st and 2nd floor were destined to not pass the selection. From now on, the bigwigs focused their attention on those who were on the 3rd floor and above. If we categorize the participants, Lu Dubu is the top one. Taoist Lawn of Mysterious Sky, Island said slowly. Wu Huang, Xihua, Wang Tu, and a dozen others can be ranked first. Taoist Lawn of the Mystic Void, Island said slowly. Helian Qi, Lan Yunka, and the others can be ranked second. His words were spoken with fervor and assurance, and many bigwigs agreed with him. But very quickly, Taoist Lan changed the topic. According to this classification, that Jin Duyi, he's almost a second-rank character. He does look extraordinary. He can definitely be the top of a battle zone. Some bigwigs' expressions suddenly became strange. Even a fool could tell that Taoist Lan's recognition of Jin Duyi's strength was, in fact, sarcasm. In fact, Lin Sun was indeed on the 4th floor, killing the last opponent. But Heng Xiao of Xuanji Taoist sect's face darkened, and he was very unhappy. Jin Duyi was the youngest martial uncle of Boyazi. How could he allow others to slander him like this? Of course, Heng Xiao also knew that Taoist Lan did this because Jin Duyi defeated Shi Ling and Shi Zi. Taking a deep breath, Heng Xiao suppressed his disgust and said, Taoist Lan, with your status, don't you think it's a little ungentlemanly to deliberately target a young man? Taoist Lan smiled. I'm just speaking the truth. Heng Xiao said coldly. Then let me tell you, whether it's Jin Di or the others, they may be in the 2nd rank now, but they may not be the same when the selection ends. Then let's wait and see. Taoist Lon sneered, looking like he couldn't be bothered to argue with him. Everyone look. After Lu Dubu reached the 6th level, his speed of advancement has slowed down quite a bit. Someone suddenly said, currently, Wu Huang has already killed his way into the 6th level. Moreover, looking at his speed, it is extremely likely that he will surpass Lu Dubu. As soon as these words came out, the attention of all the big shots present was attracted. The 6th level was the Black Fog Mystic Realm. As long as one defeated 4 refinement path fighting souls, one would be able to reach the 7th level. Currently, Lu Dubu had already killed the 2nd refinement path fighting soul and was about to fight against the 3rd refinement path fighting soul. On the other hand, Wu Huang, who had just entered the 6th level, was extremely shocking. After killing the 1st refinement path fighting soul with ease, he had already started fighting with the 2nd refinement path fighting soul. Looking at its power and speed of attack, it was indeed faintly showing signs of surpassing Lu Dubu. This Wu Huang is too powerful. Taoist Lon, since when did your mysterious Void Island have such an outstanding successor? This lad is indeed not simple. He is filled with a domineering aura. His foundation and talent are both extremely rare. I didn't expect your mysterious Void Island to hide so deeply. Taoist Lon, at this time, why don't you tell us about this Wu Huang? For a moment, all kinds of surprised and curious voices sounded. Taoist Lon couldn't help but feel proud of being paid attention to by so many big shots. He smiled reservedly and said, alas, it's nothing. He is just slightly better than Jin Duyi, who won 99 battles in a row. He didn't dare to say that Lu Dubu was not as good as Wu Huang, in case he offended Guan Su of the Great Void Sect. But when it came to criticizing Lin Sun, he was unequivocal. This made Hung Zhao's face turn gloomy. This old bastard really wanted to compete with him. However, Lin Sun's performance at this time was indeed left behind by Wu Huang. This made Hung Zhao's somewhat lack of confidence to refute. He was secretly anxious. Why hadn't this little ancestor shown his power yet? After 3/4 of an hour, Wu Huang and Lu Dubu entered the 7th level almost at the same time. This scene caused another round of exclamation. However, it was also at this time that both Wu Huang and Lu Dubu's attack speed slowed down significantly. This was because the power of the refinement path fighting soul they encountered was so strong that it made them feel extremely pressured. On the 6th level, Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, Yuan He, and a dozen other peerless figures were chasing each other and fighting with all their might. The speed of their attack was also much slower than before. On the 5th level, Helian Qi, Lan Yunke, Yu Qianxing, and dozens of other strong figures were the same. As for those below the 5th level, many strong figures who had an outstanding performance started to feel the strain. Compared to the strong figures in front of them, the gap between them and the strong figures in front of them was getting bigger and bigger. Now that 3/4 of an hour has passed, I suspect that the strong figures who have not entered the 5th level have been eliminated someone's side. There were nearly 800 participants below the 5th level. Every participant was an outstanding figure from the first round of selection. Some of them could even be ranked in the top 10 of their respective battle zones. For example, Dong Shi and the others from the Lingfeng City battle zone were currently on the 4th level. If there were no accidents, after the time it took for an incense to burn, they had almost no hope of reaching the 9th level. Naturally, they were destined to be unable to pass this round of selection. The struggle for the Great Tao has always been like this. This is only the 2nd round of selection, and it is only limited to our Yinzhou. Guan Su said indifferently, in this primordial world, there are a total of 49 provinces. Other than the Midway province, the other provinces are like our Yinzhou, going through layers of selection. In this kind of situation, the ordinary geniuses and geniuses are destined to appear dim. Only the strong figures who can truly lead the trend of the 49 provinces can shine in the entire primordial world. These words caused the hearts of the influential figures to fluctuate. The primordial world was too vast and vast. In a province, Even the smallest one was comparable to a large world. Like the Middle-earth Dao province, it was unimaginably large. To lead the trend of the world among the younger generation, to shine in the entire primordial world, how difficult was it? Such figures could usually be said to be rare to come by in 1,000 years. Compared to them, those geniuses that could only make a name for themselves in a single province would indeed seem dim in comparison. As the saying goes, there's always someone stronger in the world. It seemed to be an extremely vulgar statement, yet it was actually an unbreakable truth that had existed since time immemorial. I only hope that a few peerless geniuses will emerge from the Tao discussion of our Yunzhou, and they'll be able to represent our Yunzhou to compete with the most extraordinary, most dazzling, most shocking, and most formidable monstrous geniuses in the entire starry sky during the Tao discussion held by the 6 great Tao courts. Guanxu's voice was heavy, and it carried ardent anticipation. At that time, we'll be able to prove to the world and all the worlds in the starry sky that our Yunzhou isn't without talent. All the people present here were visibly moved when they heard this. Guanxu's gaze had long since surpassed the scope of the Yunzhou, and it covered the entire world. His breadth of mind and boldness caused those great figures to be unable to help but admire him. This was the breadth of mind of the sect master of the #1 sect in the Yunzhou. Alas, the 6 great Tao courts, the 10 great combat clans, and some peerless monstrous geniuses from the other worlds in the starry sky. It's obvious how intense the competition will be when the Tao discussion begins. Someone sighed with emotion. Just these words alone caused many people to sigh endlessly in their hearts. Everything depends on one's own effort. In a competition of the same cultivation realm, it's a competition of one's extreme strength. The one with the strongest foundation, the top grand Tao grasped, and the strongest martial Tao would have the hope of becoming eminent amongst the geniuses in the starry sky. Guanxu's voice was calm. Everyone looked quickly. Jin Dui has actually started to successively surpass the others on the 5th level. Suddenly, someone spoke with surprise. Everyone was chatting idly earlier, yet at this moment, they were suddenly stunned when they heard this, and then their gazes shot towards the 5th level in unison. In the 5th level, Lin Sun's performance was actually the same as before, and the speed of his attacks was the same as well. There was no change at all, but it was precisely this constant and unchanging state that caused all the great figures present here to be shocked in their hearts. One had to know that there were 9 levels in the Great Void Path Refining Pagoda, and the Refining Path fighting souls distributed in each level were stronger and scarier than the one before. As they advanced, the difficulty and danger that they would encounter would also increase steadily. For example, Lu Dubu and Wu Huang, who were walking at the forefront, had already slowed down when they reached the 6th level. When they reached the 7th level, they encountered even greater pressure, and their attacking speed also slowed down a little. Similarly, in the 5th level, Helian Qi, Lan Yunke, Yu Qianxing, and the others also encountered a similar situation, and their attacking speed was not as fast and fierce as before. In this way, Lin Sun, who had maintained an extremely stable attacking speed, was instead very eye-catching. This was very easy to understand. As the difficulty and danger increased, others would slow down, but he did not slow down. In such a contrast, his attacking speed instead showed a kind of swift and fierce momentum. He doesn't know how to conserve his strength, and he's fighting so hard now. Doesn't he know the principle of exhaustion? This lad is destined to not go far. Taoist Lan snorted coldly. He had a lot of opinions about Lin Sun. At the beginning, when the mysterious deity island had sent their descendants to challenge the Xuanji Daoist sect, they were originally very confident, but who would have thought that they would return in defeat in the end? The reason was that Lin Sun, who was disguised as Jin Dui, had interfered. This naturally made Taoist Lan particularly displeased with Lin Sun. Many people also thought that Taoist Lan's words were reasonable, and suspected that Lin Sun was fighting with all his strength to catch up, which was destined to consume a lot of strength. If it was too long, it would be extremely disadvantageous for him to pass the level. But what shocked everyone was that as time went by, Lin Sun not only surpassed Helian Shi and the others and reached the 6th level, but also maintained his attacking speed. Terrifyingly stable. The following are free. Today's update was brought forward to noon because today was the last day of the month, and Jinyu is going to get married tomorrow. In the last few days' update, there were some small mistakes. It's because I've been too busy preparing for the wedding every day, so please forgive me. Originally, Jinyu planned to take a few days of leave for the wedding, but in the end, she did not. The reason was very simple. I was afraid that the book's performance would decline, afraid that my book friends would abandon me, afraid that I would be criticized for not updating, afraid. In short, it's all because I, Jinyu, cared deeply about the heavenly sons and our book friends. Otherwise, I, Jinyu, could have directly taken a leave of absence for the wedding. Currently, the first place of the Heavenly Sons' monthly votes was defended by Xia Ji alone. She was weak, so it was impossible for Jinyu not to be nervous. But because I'm busy with the wedding, I, Jinyu, don't have the energy and time to call for the monthly votes one by one. So, please promise Jinyu, in the last 2 days of the month, if you have the monthly votes in your hands, support Jinyu, who is busy with the wedding but still worried about the Heavenly Sons. Chapter 1985. The 6th floor, Black Fog's Secret Realm. One needed to defeat 4 refining path fighting souls to enter the 7th floor. But everyone knew that the higher the floor in the pagoda, the more powerful the refining path fighting soul would be. Just like the refining path fighting soul on the 6th floor, it seemed to be condensed from invisible black fog, and each of them had the combat power of a perfect Saint King. Moreover, they controlled extremely amazing Taoism and Dharma. Although they were not living creatures, the strength of their fighting skills was enough to change people's expressions. More than a dozen peerless figures like Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, Yuan He, Su Muhan, and others could be called the most dazzling group of existences in Yinzhou. But at this time in this 6th floor, they also felt great pressure, causing the speed of their Dharma to become sluggish, and the battle situation was also extremely intense. However, Lin Sun's performance was completely different. After leaving Helian Qi, Lan Yunke, Yu Qianxing, and others behind one by one, after reaching the 6th floor, he still maintained the same speed of attack as before. This made the big shots who were paying attention to this scene couldn't help but show a strange expression. From the beginning until the end, this kid revealed a battle posture that was neither too fast nor too slow, and neither arrogant nor rash. His speed of passing through the levels can't be said to be fast, nor can it be said to be slow. But it's this unchanging speed of his cultivation technique that's even more shocking, some big shots gasped. Yes, like Lu Dubu and Wu Huang. Both of them are like a hot knife through butter, advancing bravely and vigorously. Although they are far ahead of everyone now, in the 7th floor, they are also facing pressure. Someone analyzed, but this Jin Dui is too stable. From the 1st floor to the 6th floor, the time he used to pass through the levels and the momentum of his Dharma are almost the same. This is too terrifying. In this way, to achieve this step, one must have absolute strength, and a refining path fighting soul on the 6th floor will obviously not be this boy's opponent. These words attracted many big shots to nod in agreement. They were either the leaders of a sect or the patriarchs of an ancient clan. With their sharp eyes, they could all see that if Jin Di maintained this momentum and continued to pass through the levels, it was very likely that he would catch up. Seeing that everyone was praising Lin Sun, Hung Xiao couldn't help but smile. He thought in his heart, how could the martial uncle of the Xuanji Taoist sect be ordinary? Only Taoist Lan's expression was rather gloomy. He had also asserted that Lin Sun's fighting style was doomed to be exhausted and could not hold on for long. But who would have thought that Lin Sun would surpass all his competitors all the way from the 5th floor? And when he reached the 6th floor, there was still no sign of decline. This caused him to be slightly speechless, and he felt as if he'd been slapped soundlessly, causing him to feel slightly embarrassed. Taking a deep breath, Taoist Lan said in a low voice, on the 6th floor, there's a peerless genius like Xie Yuhua, a rare genius like Wang Tu, and others like Su Muhan. I'm afraid there's not much hope for Jin Dui to catch up. Everyone was stunned, and many people shook their heads and their hearts. How could they not discern that Taoist Lan's words carried prejudice? It's not up to you, Taoist Lan. Hung Xiao couldn't stand it anymore and said coldly, as a leader of an orthodoxy, you repeatedly target a young man with such harsh words. Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by the world? Taoist Lan's face was gloomy, and he was about to say something. But then he heard an exclamation. Look, this lad has killed the second refining path fighting soul on the 6th floor and surpassed 9 opponents at once. This sentence shocked the audience, and they all looked over. As long as one defeated 4 refining path fighting souls on the 6th floor, he could reach the 7th floor. For example, Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, Yuan He, Su Muhan, and more than a dozen people were fighting with these 4 refining path fighting souls. The more powerful ones like Xie Yuhua and Wang Tu had already killed 3 refinement path battle souls each and were currently in an intense battle with the last opponent. As for Yuan He, Su Muhan, and the rest, they had already killed 2 refinement path fighting souls and were fighting with the 3rd refinement path fighting soul. The other 9 people were fighting with the 2nd refining path fighting soul. Now that Lin Sun had just reached the 6th floor, he had already killed 2 refining path fighting souls, which meant that he had surpassed 9 opponents. This scene was naturally very shocking. Taoist Lan, who originally wanted to refute Hung Xiao, was instantly speechless. He had nowhere to vent his anger, and his face was gloomy. Hung Xiao was extremely pleased, and he said, "This is called catching up from behind. He has great potential." The other bigwigs looked at each other with different expressions. It was their first time meeting Jin Duyi, and they naturally wouldn't have any prejudice against him. But they could tell that Jin Duyi must have offended Mysterious Void Island before, which was why he was being targeted by Taoist Lan. They wouldn't say anything about it, and they wouldn't go against the leader of Mysterious Void Island just because Jin Duyi had performed well. But soon, these bigwigs couldn't help but feel nervous. The leader of Skyscraping Sword Sect, the leader of Cloud Star Holy Sect, the patriarch of Su Clan, and the abbot of Canaan Zen Sect all showed serious expressions. Because at this time, Lin Sun had already killed the 3rd refining path fighting soul and achieved the same result as Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, Su Muhan, and Yuan He. The atmosphere in the surroundings instantly became deathly silent, while the gazes of everyone stared fixedly at the enormous screen of light. Good, not bad. Not long after, the leader of Cloud Star Holy Sect and the leader of Skyscraping Sword Sect showed joy, because Xie Yuhua and Wang Tu killed the 4th refining path fighting soul almost at the same time and entered the 7th floor. The patriarch of Su Clan, the abbot of Canaan Zen Sect, and other bigwigs shook their heads with complicated expressions, because the 3rd one to enter the 7th floor was Lin Sun. This also meant that Su Muhan, Yuan He, and others were also left behind by Lin Sun. This Jin Duyi is really a terrifying character. He hides his strength and is as steady as a rock. The patriarch of Su Clan sighed with emotion. The heavy sword has no edge, and great skill appears clumsy. Donor Jin Duyi is indeed extraordinary. The abbot of Canaan Zen Sect nodded. At this time, how could the bigwigs not see that Jin Duyi, who was selected from Lingfeng City, was completely a peerless figure? 99 consecutive victories made him famous in Cloud State. Suppressing Hellion Qi with 1 strike made him enter the vision of the 7 orthodoxies and attracted a lot of attention. Yet now, in the 2nd round of the selection, his unhurried and steady speed that was like a divine mountain had alarmed all the great figures present. Only Taoist Lan felt depressed and couldn't help saying, "When he surpasses Wu Huang and Lu Dubu, let me apologize to him personally and admit that I am blind." His words made the whole audience look at him. But after thinking about it carefully, everyone didn't think so. Lu Dubu and Wu Huang had already entered the 8th floor, and Jin Duyi had just entered the 7th floor. It was almost impossible to catch up with them, unless Jin Duyi could still maintain that kind of steady and terrifying speed when passing through the 7th 8th and 9th floor, there might be a glimmer of hope. But was this possible? Possible. Only Hung Shao was determined in his heart. Now, 45 minutes had passed since the second round of selection. Lu Dubu and Wu Huang had already entered the 8th floor, and their results were almost equal. This attracted the attention of everyone present. On the 7th floor, Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, and Lin Sun also attracted a lot of attention. On the 6th floor, Su Muhan, Yuan He, and the rest were Su Muhan. On the 5th floor, Helian Qi, Yu Qianxing, Chu Qiu, and the rest were already showing signs of entering the 6th floor. As for the experts below the 5th floor, they couldn't attract the attention of the bigwigs present anymore. This was because everyone knew that half of the time had passed. Those who were below the 5th floor could not pass the second round of selection. To the experts who were in the Great Void Dao Pagoda, everything that was happening in the outside world was undetectable. As time passed, everyone was using all their means to kill. Some people were in high spirits. Some people were killing crazily. Some people were calm. But more people were beginning to feel hopeless and powerless. There were more than 900 experts who participated in the second round of selection. There were experts who stood out from the 10 participating areas and the successors of the 7 orthodoxies. But now, the experts below the 5th level were gradually losing their confidence. Because even if they could persist, there wasn't enough time. But all this didn't affect Lin Sun at all. The 7th floor. The secret realm of Cloud Sea. To pass this floor, one needed to defeat 3 refining path fighting souls. At this time, Lin Sun was still the same as before. He maintained a calm and ethereal state of mind. When fighting against the enemy, he adjusted his combat strength according to the situation. Even though the refining path fighting souls on the 7th floor were incredibly strong, they still couldn't bring him much pressure. At most, he would be able to win in a few moves. Lin Sun didn't care about this. He only cared about the source of martial arts that he obtained after killing the refining path fighting souls. Boom! After killing another refining path fighting soul and obtaining a pure and fixed source of martial arts, Lin Sun's eyes lit up. I'm about to break through. One last step, and I can condense the Scarlet Flame Taoist body. This last step must be done in one go. It seems that I have to sprint with all my strength. Lin Sun thought for a moment and made a decision. Almost at the same time in the outside world, a group of bigwigs couldn't calm down. Lu Dubu starts the final sprint. Wu Huang also starts to exert his strength. Exclamations sounded. Almost all eyes gathered on the 8th floor, staring at Lu Dubu and Wu Huang. On the 8th floor, one needed to defeat 2 refining path fighting souls to reach the highest 9th floor. However, the power of these 2 refining path fighting souls was more abnormal and terrible than the other. Lu Dubu and Wu Huang fought fiercely for nearly a quarter of an hour before they killed one each. But now, the 2 suddenly exerted their strength. Obviously, it didn't intend to hold back and completely broke out. This is the last chapter. Goldfish got married today, but I have to make up for the missing updates. Please search the WeChat public account, ZiaJinu233, add me, and you can see Goldfish's wedding photos. So shy. Chapter 1986. The 8th level. Lu Dubu, who was dressed in a loose robe and looked like a weak scholar, seemed to have become another person. His entire body was flowing with a divine radiance, and his aura was everlasting. When his eyes opened and closed, it was as if the sun and moon were floating in them, captivating one's soul. Floating like a dream, his long hair fluttered in the wind as a magnificent, dreamlike Dao domain appeared in front of him. Inside the Dao domain, there was a grand scene of the vicissitudes of life and the joys and sorrows of life. Boom! Opposite him, a black-haired, black-clothed sword immortal-like refinement path fighting soul was caught off guard and was trapped inside. In the blink of an eye, the world changes in an instant. Lu Dubu said leisurely like a ruler. As his voice fell, it was as if a river of time surged out from his Dao domain. The black-haired refinement path fighting soul was instantly submerged within it. A deep thunder-like roar resounded. The magnificent and vast Dao realm was like a nightmare. With a terrifying power, it devoured the struggling refinement path fighting soul bit by bit. Lu Dubu placed his hands behind his back and looked peerless. After killing the refinement path fighting soul on the 9th level, I will be able to absorb the martial path source energy to perfect my floating like a dream. At that time, I will have nothing to fear even if I have to go to the Dao Discussion Grand Gathering to compete with the peerless figures of the all heavens. Lu Dubu was filled with pride. Also on the 8th level, Rakshasa omnidirectional. Wu Huang's expression was cold. As he walked, a thick, ink-like mist spread out like a curtain of eternal night, turning into a Dao domain. Within the domain, the path was paved with scarlet red and decorated with white bones. Numerous Rakshasas were covered in black mist, and they were like evil spirits that had surged out from hell. They covered the heavens and the earth as they flashed through the heavens and the earth, and they emitted a sharp, savage, and terrifying aura. Wu Huang's black robe fluttered as he stood there. He was like the Lord of Rakshasa, the Emperor of evil spirits. His grayish-brown eyes were filled with ruthlessness. As the Emperor's envoy of the divine illuminating ancient sect, his foundation, talent, and combat strength were all top-notch in the world. If he did not come from the dark world, he would have been ranked on the All Heavens King Sage board a long time ago. Kill! Wu Huang waved his hand. The 10-direction Rakshasa descended. As though the gates of hell had opened, countless evil Rakshasa charged out and enveloped the refinement path battle soul. In the eyes of those big shots, the current Lu Dubu and Wu Huang were completely different. The unparalleled magnificence he revealed when he erupted with his full strength caused a wisp of shock to arise in their hearts, and they were stunned. All right, Guan Su praised with an excited expression. Lu Dubu was the pride of the great Void Dao sect. He was a prodigy who was unparalleled in the Cloud Prefecture. Sooner or later, he would shine in the Dao sparring event organized by the 6 major Dao courts. Not bad, not bad. Daoist Lan also smiled, but he felt a little regretful. How good would it be if Wu Huang was the true descendant of mysterious Void Island? He looked at Hung Xiao and was just about to mock and ridicule him when he suddenly noticed that Hung Xiao actually stood up. His face was glowing as he clapped his hands and praised. Good, good, all right. Everyone was startled. Daoist Lan was also suspicious. Lu Dubu and Wu Huang were not the descendants of Xuanji Dao sect. Why was Hung Xiao even more excited than them? When they followed Hung Xiao's gaze, these big shots also revealed a look of astonishment. Then, a series of gasps could be heard. It turned out that while they were completely attracted by Lu Dubu and Wu Huang's performance, Lin Sun had already killed 3 refinement path battle souls on the 7th floor like a hot knife through butter. Xie Yuhua and Wang Tu, who were originally ahead of him, were overtaken in one fell swoop. This, the headmaster of Cloud Star Divine Sect, was speechless. What just happened? How did Jin Dui become so fierce all of a sudden? The headmaster of Skyscraping Sword Sect was also dumbfounded. The other big shots also looked as though they had seen a ghost. They really did not expect such a thing to happen in such a short period of time. Could it be that this lad has only really exerted his full strength now? Someone made a deduction. That one sentence caused the others to look at each other in shock. Previously, Jin Di's cultivation method and speed were already terrifyingly stable. Many people suspected that he had already secretly exerted his full strength. But now it seemed that they had all underestimated this young man's foundation. Looking at his unparalleled killing speed, everyone felt a sense of disbelief. Those were the 7th level refining path battle souls. How powerful they were. But in front of him, they were all killed one by one like paper paste. It was also at this time that they understood why Hung Xiao was so excited. Jin Dui's performance at this moment was indeed too extraordinary. He was not inferior to Lu Dubu and Wu Huang at all. The speed of passing through is completely different from the real combat. After all, the refining path battle soul is a dead object, while the real battle between the strong also tests one's state of mind and willpower. Taoist Lan said, "In my opinion, Jin Dui is indeed extraordinary. But if you say that he can be compared with Lu Dubu and Wu Huang, I can't agree at all." Perhaps because he had been slapped in the face too many times, when he spoke this time, although he was still targeting Lin Sun, his words were much more reserved. Hung Xiao snorted coldly. It's not difficult to distinguish who is stronger and who is weaker. When the third round begins, we will see who is stronger. Taoist Lan smiled and said, "You're right, but it's a pity that Lu Dubu and Wu Huang have already killed their way into the 9th level. Jin Dui has just reached the 8th level. I'm afraid it's difficult for him to catch up." Wu Huang represented the mysterious Void Island. As long as he could suppress Lin Sun, Taoist Lan would be very satisfied. However, just as his voice fell, there was a burst of exclamations in the field. In the 8th level, Lin Sun still showed a crushing posture. In just a moment, he killed an opponent. It should be noted that whether it was Lu Dubu or Wu Huang, it took them half a quarter of an hour to kill the refining path battle soul on the 8th level. Such a comparison was obvious. When Lin Sun killed the 2nd refining path fighting soul and reached the 9th floor, all the bigwigs, including Guanxu, were shocked and stunned. The situation was completely out of their expectations, and it had also exceeded their imaginations. Too fast. It was too fast for people to react. When they came to their senses, Lin Sun had already rushed to the 9th level. How is this possible? Taoist Lan could no longer keep calm. His face changed greatly, and he cried out involuntarily. The other big shots could not calm down either. Jin Dui had indeed brought them too much shock and surprise. In the first 6 levels, he was as steady as a rock, catching up with one opponent after another, showing an extremely strong foundation. At that time, there was only one word that left the impression of him: steady. Starting from the 7th level, he seemed to have changed into a different person, like a peerless blade hidden deep in a box. At this moment, he was unstoppable and as fast as the wind. How amazing Xie Yua was, how dazzling Wang Tu was, but they were all left behind by him. And at this time, he rushed to the 9th level at an incredible speed. The atmosphere was silent. The big shots were all experienced, but they were also shocked by the scene in front of them. For a moment, all kinds of thoughts came into their minds. Jin Dui hid his strength so deeply. How could this be the foundation that a rogue cultivator should have? He must be a peerless genius from another world in the starry sky. I just don't know which antique he is from. I didn't expect this. Even Hung Xiao was stunned. He knew that Lin Sun was very strong, and his background was also incredibly powerful. But he still did not expect that such a low-key young man would be so dazzling when he showed his edge. After a while, Taoist Lan came back to his senses. He suppressed his emotions and said with a gloomy expression, "Now, Jin Dui has reached the 9th level like Lu Dubu and Wu Huang. I just don't know if he can." His voice stopped abruptly. His eyeballs almost fell out, and his expression was frozen. But at this moment, no one wanted to laugh at him, because all the big shots were in a trance at this moment. They were so shocked that they almost lost control. There is only one refining path fighting soul on the 9th level of the secret realm of Great Void. It was also the most powerful and terrifying one. Not to mention an ordinary peerless Saint King. Even the most outstanding peerless Saint King in the exceptional realm would have to pay a great price to kill it. Lu Dubu and Wu Huang had already tried their best, but they were locked in a stalemate with the refining path fighting soul. It was impossible to determine the winner in a short time. But Lin Sun was completely different. After he reached the 9th level, he killed the refining path fighting soul in just a few breaths, just like before. His domineering attitude and unparalleled demeanor stunned all the big shots present. They all lost their voices and were shocked speechless. What a monster! Someone held it in for a long time and spat out 3 words. Unbelievable! Someone was in trance. If this lad is a core disciple from the 6 Taoist courts, I will not have any doubt. Perhaps only a colossus like the 6 great Tao courts could nurture such a figure. Someone sighed with emotion. No, this is not true. Jin Dui must have cheated. At this moment, Taoist Lan had completely lost his composure and shouted. Since the second round of selection, he had been targeting Lin Sun. But every time, he was slapped in the face by Lin Sun's performance, which made him more and more depressed. Until now, when Lin Sun once again surpassed Lu Dubu and Wu Huang in an unparalleled manner. This scene was simply like a clear and resounding slap on Taoist Lan's face, causing him to be exasperated and unable to accept it. In fact, if they did not see it with their own eyes, the other big shots present would not dare to believe that there would be such a reversal at the last moment. Lu Dubu and Wu Huang, who were originally regarded as the first candidates of the second round of selection, were actually surpassed by Jin Dui, a dark horse. Who would have dared to imagine this before? Taoist Lan, you are ridiculous. This election took place in the Great Void Refining Path Pagoda. Do you think that Taoist Guan Su will tolerate cheating? Chapter 1987. Everyone could not help but laugh at Heng Zhao's words. Cheating? Impossible. On this cloud platform, there were either the leaders of an orthodoxy or the leaders of an ancient clan. If anyone cheated, they would have seen through it. Moreover, the second round of selection would take place in the Great Void Path Pagoda, the most precious treasure of the Great Void Path sect. Under such circumstances, Taoist Lan actually accused Jin Dui of cheating. This was a direct slap in the face of the Great Void Path sect. As expected, as the leader of the Great Void Path sect, Guan Su's face darkened. He stared at Taoist Lan coldly and said, Taoism peer, are you questioning the Great Void Path sect's trickery? Taoist Lan's expression changed. He quickly said, No, it's just that Jin Dui's behavior is too abnormal. I can't help but lose my composure. Many big shots agreed with his words. Previously, who would have thought that at the moment when Lu Dubu and Wu Huang were about to compete fiercely for first place, such a reversal would occur? Jin Dui passed the 9th level before Lu Dubu and Wu Huang with an unparalleled attitude, becoming the first to pass the second round of selection. No one could have predicted such an outcome before. It was too unexpected. On the 9th level of the Great Void Path Pagoda, Lin Sun stood alone with his eyes slightly closed. His expression was calm and ethereal. Within his body, as the boundless martial Tao source energy surged into his heart, the crimson fire divine embryo within the divine palace in his heart produced an intense, thunder-like rhythm and a copious amount of life energy that was as vast as the sea also spread out, erupting crazily. Boom! In just a moment, a sound like the beginning of chaos resounded in his heart palace. On the platform above Lin Sun's head, a magnificent scarlet rain of light appeared. Almost at the same time, the Rui Taoist robe on Lin Sun's body flowed with a magical aura, completely covering up this strange phenomenon. From the outside, one could only see a fiery glow, but could not see the strange phenomenon happening to Lin Sun. In the end, the crimson-red rain of light condensed into a tall figure that wore a fiery robe. His entire body was coiled with crystalline and dazzling flames, and he was like a god that controlled heavenly flames and bathed in flames. Scarlet flame, Taoist body. Fire was one of the 5 elements. It was the essence of Yang and the Li of the 8 trigrams. This was a great Tao clone that was nurtured from a crimson flame, divine embryo. Its aura was like a scorching sun, grand and vast, and it was extremely domineering and domineering. This was also the 4th doppelganger of the great path that Lin Sun had formed since he started cultivating. Boom! As Lin Sun's essence, chi, and spirit were integrated into the scarlet fire Taoist physique, countless magical insights came to his mind like a tide. After a long time, the red-robed Lin Sun suddenly opened his slightly closed eyes. Everything in the world was obliterated, and only a ball of flames burned fiercely. The sky, the earth, the sun, the moon, and the stars were all smelted into nothingness. The traces of time and space were all incinerated. That ball of fire became the one and only eternal. This amazing scene appeared in Lin Sun's pupils and finally turned into 2 beams of fire, sweeping out. Boom! The 9th level was called the Great Void Secret Realm. It was a dark world like nothingness. At this moment, as Lin Sun opened his eyes, a pair of flame beams appeared, illuminating the whole world. It was as if the whole world was incinerating. This was the talent power of the Scarlet Fire Taoist physique. Eyes of burning ashes. The core mystery lay in one word: ashes, burning the sky and destroying the earth, turning everything into ashes. This kind of talent was also the most domineering and violent. After a while, as the red-robed Lin Sun withdrew his power, the incinerating power in this world also disappeared, and everything returned to normal. However, there was a trace of surprise in Lin Sun's eyes, because when he executed the Eye of Burning Ember, he'd actually unintentionally awakened the energy of the myriad profound Tao flames, causing a strand of the aura of the myriad profound Tao flames to fuse into this innate divine ability, causing the might of the Eye of Burning Ember to instantly rise to an unimaginable level. According to Lin Sun's estimation, the original power of the Eyes of Burning Ashes could easily kill the top figures of the same generation. And with the convergence of the breath of the wonderful Tao fire, when he used this talent, killing people in the Quasi-Emperor realm would be a piece of cake. When he came to this conclusion, Lin Sun was shocked, and he became more and more aware of the horror of the Great Way Yellow Court scripture. Greenwood Taoist body controls the power of life and death. Yellow Taoist body controls the power of life and death. Yellow Taoist body controls the seal of all living beings. Black water Taoist body deduces the beauty of the 3,000 weak water. And this Scarlet Fire Taoist body, with the Eyes of Burning Ashes, carries out the tyrannical way of destruction. Lin Sun thought silently, feeling the mystery of the Scarlet Fire Taoist body. He did not know that after passing through the 9th level, he was already the first person in the second round of selection. In other words, from the beginning of entering the Great Void Path Pagoda until now, his mind was not on competing for the ranking at all. It was the 5th quarter of the second round of selection. Lu Dubu, dressed in a wide-sleeved Confucian robe, walked out of the Great Void Path Pagoda like a weak scholar. There was a smile on his lips, and he was in high spirits. After passing through the 9th level, the accumulated martial source energy in his body allowed him to completely control the Tao field, floating like a dream. This could be said to be an unexpected surprise. As he walked out of the Great Void Path Pagoda, Lu Dubu was already prepared to receive the attention of everyone. However, what surprised him was that there was no praise, uproar, shock, and cheers that he expected. Everyone's expression was indescribably strange. They seemed to be shocked and also seemed to be in a trance. The atmosphere was also very quiet. Could it be that because they did not expect that I would pass through the second round of selection so quickly, they could not react immediately? Lu Dubu was puzzled. He was very confident about passing through this round. Just like his name, he was destined to be unrivaled and leave everyone in the dust. However, he could not understand the reaction of the crowd. No matter how shocked they were, they should not have such an expression, right? Just as Lu Dubu was about to say something, he suddenly noticed a gaze from behind him. He turned his head and saw Wu Huang's tall and imposing figure walking out of the Great Void Path Pagoda. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and his body emitted a terrifying aura. At this moment, when he noticed Lu Dubu's gaze, Wu Huang's lips curled into a mocking smile. His expression was playful. Lu Dubu frowned, and a bad feeling rose in his heart. "Dubu, come here." Just then, Guan Su, who was far away, sighed and broke the silent atmosphere. Lu Dubu's body froze, and he turned his head with difficulty. He looked at Guan Su and said, "Supreme Headmaster, the first place of the second round of selection. Could it be?" Guan Su nodded. Lu Dubu felt his head buzzing as if he was struck by lightning. The first place was not him. This was like a bolt from the blue. It was too sudden. Lu Dubu, who was full of confidence and was waiting for everyone to praise him, almost lost control of his state of mind. How was this possible? If he wasn't the first, then who would be the first? As the most dazzling genius of a younger generation in Yinzhou, Under Lu Dubu's seemingly humble appearance, there was a sense of pride. But he didn't expect that in just the second round of selection, the first place that he was determined to get would disappear just like that. Ha ha ha! Lu Dubu, are you very surprised? Are you very anxious? A loud and arrogant laughter resounded, which was so ear-piercing. Lu Dubu turned his head to look and saw Wu Huang's long hair fluttering in the wind as he laughed at the sky. His laughter did not hide the ridicule towards him at all. Lu Dubu's expression was uncertain. So was this guy. A strong sense of unwillingness and anger surged in his heart, causing Lu Dubu to clench his hands in his sleeves. Wu Huang, this is only the second round of selection. In the third round of selection, I will make it so that you won't even be able to laugh. Lu Dubu said word by word. His voice seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. Oh, I will accompany you to the end. Wu Huang grinned, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth. He was proud of himself. After he finished speaking, he couldn't help but laugh again. Among the opponents in this round, only Lu Dubu caught his attention. And now, the other party had already been surpassed by him. How could Wu Huang not be happy? His personality had always been like this, arrogant and direct, never concealing anything. Ha, young man, isn't it too early to be happy? I advise you to figure out the situation first. It won't be too late to be happy then. Guan couldn't stand it anymore and couldn't help but speak out coldly. Wu Huang was startled. He looked at the crowd, only to discover that everyone was looking at him with a subtle look in their eyes. There wasn't the expected praise, admiration, and shock. Instead, there was a faintly discernible pity. It was also at this moment that profound Void Island's Taoist Lawn couldn't help but say, Wu Huang, the first person to pass is someone else. Without waiting for him to finish, Wu Huang's expression changed, and he said resolutely, Impossible. These three words were filled with anger and disbelief. Lu Dubu was also startled at first. Then his expression became strange. So the first place wasn't Wu Huang. At this moment, Lu Dubu really wanted to ask, Wu Huang, oh Wu Huang, why don't you laugh? At the same time, everyone looked at Wu Huang with even more pity in their eyes. This made Wu Huang feel uncomfortable. The complacency and happiness in his heart were all replaced by bewilderment. Who exactly is first? He couldn't help but ask. Lu Dubu's heart was also filled with curiosity. It's Jin Duyi. Taoist Lan let out a long sigh, and his face turned blue. He hated and disliked Lin the most, but at this moment, he had to say the fact that Lin was first. This made him very depressed. Impossible! Wu Huang and Lu Dubu almost shouted at the same time, as if they had seen a ghost. Jin Duyi? They had indeed paid attention to this person before, but they didn't regard him as a candidate to compete for the first place at all. Why is it impossible? Heng Xiao smiled slightly and said indifferently, Everyone here has seen it clearly. You two young people, it's better to calm down, lest you make any more jokes. His words were simple, but it made Lu Dubu and Wu Huang's expressions a little stiff. They looked at the others present, but found that no one refuted Heng Xiao's words. This fact caused their hearts to sink. Finally, I've finished the wedding and recovered some strength today. Next, Goldfish will first make up for what she owes, and then start to prepare for the explosive update. Chapter 1988. The second round of selection. First place for Jin Duyi. This reality was like a heavy blow, causing Lu Dubu and Wu Huang to be stunned, appearing incomparably silent. When Lu Dubu thought of the beginning, when he thought that his appearance would attract the attention of tens of thousands of people, his face became hot and unbearably hot. At the same time, Wu Huang felt depressed. He was laughing and mocking Lu Dubu just now. He did not expect that he would become a laughingstock in the end. At this moment, the two of them wanted to hide in a hole in the ground. This was too embarrassing. Such a thing happened under the watchful eyes of the crowd. If news of this got out, where they put their faces? It's only the second round of selection. There's no need to be discouraged. Just wait for the third round of selection and defeat Jin Duyi. Taoist Lan spoke warmly to comfort him. Heng Xiao was instantly unhappy. Defeat Jin Duyi? Taoist Lan, why don't you learn from your mistakes? seeing that the two were about to argue again. There was a commotion at this moment. Lin Sun's figure walked out from the Great Void Path Pagoda. The moment he appeared, he attracted everyone's attention. Every influential figure had a complicated expression on their faces. Some were shocked, some were sighing, some were curious, and some were heartfelt admiration. This seemingly ordinary young man had created too many sensational things that attracted people's attention. In the first round of selection, he was like a dark horse that appeared out of nowhere. He became the top of the High Wind City's participant zone. He also created a record of 99 consecutive victories, which was unique. And now, he was the first person to pass the 9th level of the Great Void Path Pagoda, becoming the first person in the second round of selection. The brilliant Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, Su Muhan, and the rest were left behind by him. Even peerless existences like Lu Dubu and Wu Huang could only serve as foils in the end. It was foreseeable that when the results of the second round of selection spread out, the entire Yunzhou would be shocked and shocked. After all, compared to Lu Dubu, the name Jin Di was almost unknown in the past. The sensation it caused would definitely be extraordinary. Young man, your previous performance was extraordinary. It opened our eyes. However, you have to be careful. The third round of selection is a one-on-one battle. Whether or not you can make it to the top 10 is a variable. Guan Su spoke with a smile, not hiding his admiration at all. In my opinion, it shouldn't be difficult for this little friend to enter the top 10. Not bad. I'm looking forward to his performance in a head-on confrontation. I believe he won't disappoint us. The other big shots also spoke up, more or less with good intentions. Lin Sun cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your guidance." After witnessing all of this, Lu Dubu and Wu Huang felt even more upset in their hearts. This was the treatment received by the first. Unfortunately, it did not belong to them. As time passed, more and more experts walked out of the Great Void, refining Dao Pagoda. Xie Hua, Wang Tu, Su Muhan, Yuan He, soon after, Yu Qianxing, Helian Qi, Lan Yunke, Jintian Xianyue, all of them walked out one by one. When they learned that the first person to pass the second round of selection was neither Lu Dubu nor Wu Huang, these people who could be said to be the top figures among their peers were all shocked. When they learned that the first place was Lin Sun, they felt even more astonished and incredible. Especially Helian Qi, who held a grudge against Lin Sun. His eyeballs almost fell out, and his face became extremely interesting. Only Jintian Xianyue was the calmest, and only she knew how terrifying Lin Sun's foundation was. Until the end of 30 minutes, a total of 49 people had passed the second round of selection. Among them, most of them were the core descendants of the 7 orthodoxies, and there were obviously fewer experts from the 10 battlefields. For example, Gu Jinxing, who was selected together with Lin Sun from the battlefields of Lingfeng City, was also considered an outstanding talent in swordsmanship, but in the end, he was also eliminated. When they saw an expert like Gu Jinxing finally stopped in the second round of selection, it also caused many people to sigh and feel pity. This was the struggle for the Tao. There would always be someone stronger than you. In the end, only 10 people would be selected from the Tao discussion competition in Cloud State to represent Cloud State to participate in the Tao discussion grand meeting held by the 6 Tao courts. It could be imagined how cruel the competition was. It could also be inferred that even among the experts who had passed the second round of selection, there would still be 39 people who would be eliminated in the third round of selection. Lin Sun was not worried about all this. Since he walked out of the Great Void Tao, refining Pagoda, he had been comprehending and pondering the mystery of the Scarlet Flame Tao body and was completely uninterested in what was happening around him. Clang! A deep bell sounded, spreading over the cloud platform at the top of Immortal Marshall Peak, announcing the end of the second round of selection. So far, out of more than 900 people who participated in the selection, only 49 people won, and the others were all eliminated. On the cloud platform, Lin Sun and the other 49 people lined up in order. In the distance, the eyes of Guan Su and other big shots were gathered on them. The atmosphere was solemn. The third round of selection will be carried out in a one-on-one way, Guan Su said in a deep voice. Before the selection, we will draw lots. and there will be a lucky lot. The one who draws the lot can enter the next round without fighting." As he spoke, he waved his sleeve, and a bronze box appeared. The jade lots are in it, and each one corresponds to the name of an opponent. "Now, Jean Dui will draw lots." As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Sun stepped forward and began to draw lots under everyone's gaze. This bronze box was covered with a mysterious restriction, which isolated the perception of divine sense. In this way, the possibility of cheating was eliminated. Lin Sun took out a jade lot and looked at it, and a strange expression appeared on his lips. "Hellion Chi, what a coincidence!" He handed the jade lot to Guan Su. When Guan Su announced that the first battle would be between Jin Di and Hellion Chi, many people could not help but shake their heads. Hellion Chi? How could he be Jin Di's opponent? It should be known that in the Zhongming Tower last night, Hellion Chi was defeated by Jin Di in one move. Who didn't know about this? Some people could not help but look at Hellion Chi with sympathy. Hellion Chi's face at this moment could be described as black as the bottom of a pot. His whole body was in a daze, as if 10,000 wild horses were roaring in his heart. He was so depressed that he was about to cough up blood. Damn it. He was too unlucky. "Brother Hellion, I am looking forward to fighting with you," Lin Sun said with a smile. Hellion Chi gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. He said coldly, "Jin Di, don't be complacent. Victory or defeat will only be known after the battle." However, his heart was in a mess, and he had no confidence at all. Next, everyone stepped forward to draw lots one by one. When the results of the lots were announced one by one, it also caused a lot of restlessness and discussion. Unexpectedly, Jin Tian Xinyue actually drew the lucky lot. He could enter the next round of screening without having to fight, which also attracted many envious eyes. When the time comes, the heavens and the earth work together, but the hero is not free. Sometimes, luck was also a kind of strength. Up. When the results of the lots were out, Guan Su made a gesture with both hands. With a roar, an ancient battlefield appeared on the huge cloud platform. The battlefield was suspended in the air, made of gray-brown ancient stone, stained with blood, and emitted a strong, murderous aura. This is the first battle of the third round of selection. In the end, 24 people will win. Together with an expert who drew the lucky lot, they will enter the next battle. Now, the first battle begins. Guan Su looked solemn and announced in a deep voice. Chapter 1989. On the ancient Colosseum. Swoosh. Lin Sun's figure flashed and landed on it. He looked at Hellion Chi in the distance with a playful gaze. Hellion Chi's scalp went numb. No matter how unwilling he was, he knew that he had to participate in this battle. Taking a deep breath, Hellion Chi walked onto the arena with a heavy heart, as if he was going to die generously under the pitiful gazes of the crowd. Hellion Chi, I advise you to admit defeat. Don't waste any more time. Someone laughed out loud. Many people laughed along with him. Hellion Chi's face darkened and the veins on his forehead bulged. In the past, as a descendant of the Zhenfeng ancient clan and one of the top 10 figures in Yinzhou, Hellion Chi would be treated like a star around the moon wherever he went. But now, he was almost reduced to a target of ridicule. This difference almost drove Hellion Chi crazy. It was all because of this damned Jin Dui. Hellion Chi looked at Lin Sun with resentment and gritted his teeth. Even if I lose, I won't let you have it easy. Boom. The aura around him rumbled and divine radiance flowed. A deep ancient well appeared and black demonic chi surged out. In an instant, Hellion Chi's aura rose to its peak. He was like a fiend god that suppressed the ancient purgatory with a terrifying aura. Many people's expressions changed slightly. There was a clear difference between fighting in the Great Void Path Pagoda and fighting in real combat. Hellion Chi's ranking in the second round of selection could only be considered average. However, the power that he displayed at this moment made some of the experts who were ranked higher than him feel apprehensive. Before the crowd could react, a crescent-shaped blood-colored halberd appeared in Hellion Chi's hand. The tip of the halberd was inlaid with a demonic green eye that emitted a strange grayish-green light. Jinfeng Demon Halberd. There were exclamations that caused a commotion in the arena. Some big shots could not help but narrow their eyes and reveal a strange expression. Jinfeng Demon Halberd, a supreme treasure of the Jinfeng ancient clan. It was a true Emperor Dao demonic weapon. It was rumored that the green eye on this treasure came from a demonic Dao emperor. It had the terrifying power to steal souls and annihilate all living things. Treasures of this level were extremely rare even in the 7 great orthodoxies, and their numbers were limited. So, no one had expected that Hellion Chi would actually bring an Emperor artifact to the Cloud Prefecture's Dao discussion. At the same time, Lin Sun narrowed his eyes slightly and was shocked in his heart. The breath of this Emperor weapon was extremely strange and terrible, which made him feel frightened. Die! Hellion Chi made a move. A blood-red halberd flashed through the sky, and it gave rise to an expanse of blood-red, divine rays of light that dyed space a dense and bloody color. Woo-woo-woo. A series of ghostly wails and wolf howls resounded throughout heaven and earth. The green eyeball on the tip of the blood-red short halberd suddenly turned. Whoosh! A streak of green divine light swept out, and with a light sweep, the nearby void soundlessly split into pieces, collapsing and sinking. Lin Sun's figure flashed and avoided the attack. But the void where he stood just now suddenly disappeared and was filled with thick blood, emitting a destructive aura. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air. The power of this demonic halberd was simply too bizarre. Die! Hellion Chi's long hair fluttered as he attacked, once more like a fiend god. The blood-red short halberd danced about, and it shot out numerous strands of green divine light that crisscrossed on the battlefield, causing space to be torn apart and collapse like a piece of paper. Hiss! As Lin Sun dodged, he swung his fist and struck a strand of green divine light that assaulted his face. The two of them collided, and his fist energy that could be said to be supreme and heavy actually seemed as if it was corroded, and it was easily penetrated and dispersed. On the other hand, the green divine light didn't lose momentum in the slightest as it tore through the sky towards Lin Sun. This caused Lin Sun's brows to raise, and his figure flashed once more to avoid this attack. Jin Duyi, aren't you very strong? Why do you keep dodging? Hellion Chi shouted loudly with a disdainful expression, and his aura raged. In his hand, a blood-red short halberd flowed with the color of blood and shot out a green divine light, and it caused his might to seem even more terrifying. Many people revealed serious expressions. The demonic halberd was too formidable and terrifying. It greatly made up for Hellion Chi's lack of combat strength. It was even to the extent that it posed a threat to Jin Duyi. Moreover, although the battlefield was large, it had its limits after all. Under Hellion Chi's all-out attack, the space left for Jin Duyi to dodge was constantly shrinking. Once it reached a point where there was no way to hide or evade, then it would be dangerous. I didn't expect Hellion Chi to actually bring such a powerful treasure. Isn't he worried about being targeted by emperors and snatching his treasure? Someone's eyes flickered. The demonic halberd was a treasure that could even tempt emperors. Who dares to snatch it under the watchful eyes of so many people? What's more, since Hellion Chi dares to bring this treasure here, he must have something to rely on. I'm curious, if Jin Duyi loses like this, I'm afraid he'll be depressed to death, right? The sound of discussion rang out incessantly. Originally, no one was optimistic about Hellion Chi, thinking that he couldn't possibly be Lin Sun's opponent. But after witnessing the terrifying power of the demonic halberd, everyone couldn't help but sweat for Lin Sun. Although treasures were external objects, they were also a kind of strength. Sometimes, a powerful treasure was enough to reverse life and death and change the situation of a battle. Just like at this moment, Hellion Chi relied on the power of the demonic halberd to forcibly change his disadvantage and steadily gain the upper hand. There was a lot of discussion outside the battlefield, but Lin Sun looked indifferent on the battlefield. If he wanted to win, whether it was the 3,000 floating and sinking the Tower of Great Wei, or even the infinite bottle of Great Wei, he could easily suppress the demonic halberd. But Lin Sun didn't intend to expose these means. Li Xianwei had specifically warned him that although the Rui Taoist robe could conceal his identity during the Tao discussion, it couldn't conceal the aura of the Tower of Great Wei and other treasures. Therefore, he absolutely couldn't use it. But even so, Lin Sun wasn't worried about anything. In addition to these treasures, he still had the broken blade, which had already condensed 100 natal treasure patterns and completely transformed. What's more, the true power of the Emperor treasure could only be exerted by emperors. For example, if the demonic halberd was used by emperors, Lin Sun would definitely be obliterated in the first place, not to mention dodging. Unfortunately, Helian Qi wasn't an emperor. He was just a peak-level Saint King. When he used the demonic halberd, the power he could exert was extremely limited. Moreover, the Emperor treasure couldn't be used casually. It consumed an extremely serious amount of power. As time went on, Helian Qi was destined to be unable to hold on. This was where Lin Sun's confidence came from. Of course, if he used his full strength, Lin Sun also had the confidence to suppress Helian Qi, but he didn't think it was necessary. A mere Helian Qi wasn't worthy of him using his true strength. Time passed. On the battlefield, Lin Sun kept dodging and didn't counterattack. On the other hand, Helian Qi had a mighty and domineering attitude of killing in all directions. He was arrogant, causing countless exclamations of admiration. But those bigwigs gradually understood that Lin Sun, who seemed to be at a disadvantage, actually had a chance to counterattack from the beginning to the end. On the contrary, Helian Qi, who staked everything on a single throw, seemed to have an imposing manner, but in fact, after attacking for a long time, he didn't gain any advantage at all. As time went on, his physical strength was destined to be severely exhausted, and he would be completely exhausted. As expected, not long after, everyone present could see that Helian Qi's power had weakened considerably. A layer of sweat had already appeared between his brows, and his cheeks were slightly pale. The power of the demon-suppressing halberd wasn't as strong as before. It was also at this moment. Lin Sun, who had been dodging, suddenly stopped, and then his body flashed as he suddenly charged forward. Like a flash of light, accompanied by a muffled collision sound, Helian Qi's entire person was suddenly suppressed to the ground. Bang! The battlefield shook, and Helian Qi let out a painful grunt, lying flat on the ground, blood spurting from his mouth and nose. Meanwhile, the demon-suppressing halberd suddenly flew out, smashing to the ground with a clang. In that instant, Lin Sun had seized the opportunity to suppress Helian Qi with his fist, deciding victory with a single move. It was clean and decisive. The whole place was silent, absolutely silent. Many people felt a chill in their hearts. Helian Qi's combat strength was already extraordinary, and he had even taken out an Emperor treasure. How powerful was he? But in the end, he was still suppressed. If a treasure doesn't have the ability to match it, it is destined to be unable to display too much of its advantage, some big shot side. In the field, many people looked at Lin Sun with more and more subtle eyes. He didn't make a move, but once he did, it was a thunderous blow, suppressing his opponent cleanly. This Jin Dui was indeed shockingly strong. Jin Dui, just you wait. After a while, Helian Qi accepted the fact of his defeat with a gloomy look. He stared at Lin Sun with resentment, gritting his teeth and transmitting his voice. Then he got up and left. Your treasure is good. You have to keep it safe. The next time we meet, I may borrow it to play with. Lin Sun smiled and transmitted his voice to him. Helian Qi's body stiffened as he left, and his heart was filled with shame and anger. This guy actually had his eyes on his treasure. This was too much. Guanxu, the headmaster of the Great Void Dao sect, stood up and announced the result of the first battle. Jin Dui wins. Helian Qi is eliminated. Next battle, Wu Huang versus Lin Yinwei. Lin Sun left the battlefield, found a place to sit cross-legged, and quietly adjusted his breath. On the battlefield, Wu Huang and Rong Yinwei had already begun their battle. It only took a moment to determine the winner. Without any accident, Wu Huang defeated Rong Yingyue in an absolutely crushing manner. In the third battle, Lu Dubu versus Lu Xiaokuei. Lu Dubu won. In the fourth battle, as time went by, one battle after another was staged. It was brilliant, causing countless exclamations and uproars. In the process, Lin Sun had been watching the battles, analyzing and observing the fighting methods and styles of each strong practitioner. When peerless figures such as Wu Huang, Lu Dubu, Xie Yuhua, Wang Tu, and Su Muhan appeared, they attracted Lin Sun's attention. Until 2 hours later, a total of 48 people divided into 24 battles ended one by one. In the end, 24 people, including Lin Sun, won, because Jin Tian Xinyue drew the lucky lot. He also successfully entered the next round of selection. The other 24 people were eliminated. Chapter 1990. Among the eliminated experts, there were Chu Qiu, Gao Lingtian, and other familiar faces of Lin Sun. There were also several dazzling figures on the top 10 list, such as Helian Qi. When watching these strong people leave the field one by one, there were many sighs on the cloud platform, feeling sorry for them. Even Lin Sun sighed in his heart when he saw Chu Qiu and Gao Lingtian being eliminated. The talent and foundation of these two people were both amazing. Unfortunately, the opponents they encountered were too strong. Chu Qiu was defeated by Xie Yuhua. Gao Lingtian was defeated by Wang Tuesday. If that wasn't the case, the two of them wouldn't have stopped here. Next, continue to draw lots. There will still be a lucky lot this time, and finally 12 people will be eliminated. Guan Su stood out and announced in a deep voice. Then, Lin Sun and others came forward to draw lots one by one. To everyone's surprise, this time the lucky lot was chosen by Jin Tian Xinyue again. His heaven-defying luck had also attracted countless gazes of admiration and envy. In this regard, Jin Tian Xinyue also felt helpless. She had long been ready to fight, but she never thought that in the third round of selection, she would not be given a chance to show her strength. Lin Sun was still the first to fight, and his opponent was Lan Yunke, one of the top 10 list, who controlled the mysterious Tao realm magical flower Aquarius. Brother Jin, I admire your outstanding battle prowess. However, I will not give up in this battle. On the battlefield, Lan Yunke said loudly. He was tall and handsome in a dark cyan battle suit, holding a silver spear in his hand, and his whole body was filled with wisps of divine light of law. Please. Lin Sun nodded. Lan Yunke moved without hesitation, and a silver spear was thrust out. It was simple, but it was full of an invincible sharpness. Buzz. When the spear swept out, it seemed to turn into the mouth of a bottle, which was enshrouded in divine splendor, surging with all kinds of wonderful power, and it was colorful. Like a colorful whirlpool, it seemed to choose people to devour. Some big shots were amazed. They could see that Lan Yunke's strike was condensed in the spear, the mystery of magical flower Aquarius, which was extremely magical. It seemed to be a simple strike, but in fact, it had already exerted the power of his Tao realm to the extreme. Boom! As the spear swept out, the void in its path was pulverized like a piece of paper and exploded with a loud bang, transforming into an unparalleled turbulence that spread out. Lin Sun was still barehanded. His whole body was emitting vast and vigorous khaki Taoist light. He punched with his fist, which was simple and natural. The force of the fist collided with the spear, and it gave rise to a thunderous rumble that caused divine radiance to overflow in all directions. Lan Yunke's expression suddenly became solemn. He took a deep breath and swung his spear, and the tip of his spear was sharp like lightning. In an instant, the numerous spear shadows seemed to have transformed into a myriad of multicolored vortexes that completely tore apart the nearby space, and it was a world-shaking sight. There were even numerous faint images of Buddhas residing within the vortex, and they were chanting with the tune of Buddha and emanating boundless might. This was the secret of the realm of magical flower Aquarius. It was filled with the power of Buddhism and Zen, and it possessed great wisdom, brightness, and dignity. Instead of being surprised, Lin Sun was overjoyed. His eyes lit up, and he took on the attack head-on. Presently, even though his comprehension of Tao realms had attained the advanced stage, it hadn't truly attained perfection. If he was able to observe and experience even more first-rate Tao realms, then it would be extremely beneficial to him to temper his own Tao realm a step further. For example, Lan Yunca's magical flower Aquarius was undoubtedly a first-rate Tao realm. Bang! On the battlefield, their figures flickered and collided with each other. In an instant, they'd exchanged a few hundred blows, and they fought to the point the heavens and the earth dimmed down. The space in the surroundings was in disorder, while the tune of the Tao rumbled, and all sorts of miraculous phenomena appeared, causing all the great figures to be dazzled and exclaim endlessly with praise. On the other hand, experts like Lu Dubu and Xie Yuhua had concentrated expressions as they watched the battle seriously, and they analyzed Lin Sun and Lan Yunca's combat strengths to compare themselves with. Flower-picking smile. Lan Yunca's expression changed abruptly when he was unable to defeat Lin Sun after attacking for a long time. He revealed a solemn expression while his forehead glowed, and a wisp of a grin suffused the corners of his mouth. In his palm, a silver spear buzzed and transformed into a magnificent, resplendent, vast, and dreamlike world. In this world, heavenly flowers fell, true dragons coiled, Sanskrit sounds resounded, and the tide of chanting reflected the wonderful atmosphere of great light and great bliss. This was the true appearance of the magical flower Aquarius. It was also the strongest attack that belonged to Lan Yunca. At the same time, Lin Sun made a grabbing motion with his palm, and the all-living being's seal condensed. It was pale yellow in color, and its momentum was like a divine mountain that contained the power of all living beings and the might of the world. At this moment, an earth-shattering shock suddenly occurred on the battlefield. Terrifying and boundless collisions spread, and a destructive aura raged and roared. Many experts shuddered with fear, and even those great figures couldn't help but widen their eyes and reveal a look of surprise. When the smoke and dust dissipated, the figures of Lin Sun and Lan Yunca stood facing each other from a distance on the battlefield, and both of them were unscathed. I've tried my best, and Brother Jean obviously held back. There's no need to continue fighting. I've lost. Lan Yunca revealed a bitter smile, sighed, and admitted defeat. His words shocked the whole audience. Lan Yunca actually took the initiative to admit defeat, which was completely beyond everyone's expectations. Thank you for letting me win. Lin Sun cupped his hands and said calmly. As Lan Yunca said, if he wanted to win, this battle would not have lasted until now. However, Lin Sun was a little surprised that Lan Yunca was able to retreat and admit defeat. Brother Jean, with your background, it's not difficult for you to participate in the Six Realms Grand Meeting. I'm looking forward to your performance in that Grand Meeting. Lan Yunca took a deep breath, said with a smile, and then turned to leave. He was convinced of his defeat, because only when he fought with Jean Dui did he realize how powerful his opponent was. He was simply like an unshakable mountain. Watching Lan Yunca leave, and then looking at Lin Sun on the battlefield, whether it was those great figures or Xie Yuhua and others, their expressions became more and more subtle. Too strong. This sort of strength didn't show off, nor did it reveal itself. It was like a divine mountain that stood silently throughout the ages, and it was difficult to shake. Perhaps only figures like Lu Dubu and Wu Huang can compete with Jean Dui. The same thought emerged in the hearts of many people. The second battle, Wu Huang against Yuan He. Wu Huang won. The third battle, Lu Dubu against Nieyu. Lu Dubu won. The fourth battle, this round of battles undoubtedly seemed to be even more intense and thrilling. Practically every expert that participated in the battle could be said to be peerless existences, and they fought with each other like the sun and moon competing for brilliance. Matchless battles were played out one after another, and it caused wave after wave of uproar in the surroundings. Lin Sun seemed to be much calmer towards this. He read the Book of Herbs as he watched the battles with a leisurely bearing, as if he was an outsider. For hours later, the 12 battles ended. In the end, 12 people including Lin Sun, Lu Dubu, Wang Tu, Xie Yuhua, Su Muhan, and Yu Tianqingwan. The other 12 people were eliminated. At this point, including Jin Tian Xianyue, who drew the lucky lot, only 13 people had persisted in the third round of selection until now. The final top 10 would also be born. It's late now. You should go back and have a good rest. The final competition will be held tomorrow morning. Guansu stood out and said in a deep voice. His words made many people secretly heave a sigh of relief. Today, the second round of selection was carried out, and then the third round of selection began again and again. At this point in the battle, even people as strong as Lu Dubu, Wu Huang, and the others already felt a burst of fatigue, and their physical strength was quite consumed. If they continued to fight, their state would definitely not be as strong as when they were at their peak. Next, Lin Sun and the other 13 experts were arranged to stay on the immortal martial peak, and each occupied a blessed place with dense spiritual energy to rest and recuperate. When night fell, the news about what happened on the immortal martial peak spread out at the first time, and it spread to the great void city, causing a great sensation. The first place in the second round of selection is not Lu Dubu. This Jin Duyi is really an unbelievably strong dark horse. The list of the top 13 in the third round of selection has been released. Who would have thought that such dazzling figures as Lan Yunke and Yuan he would be eliminated? It's certain that the top 3 in this Yunzhou Tao discussion will definitely belong to Lu Dubu, Wu Huang, and Jin Duyi. I just don't know who will get the first place in the end. All kinds of discussions were fermenting in this night, and the discussion about Jin Duyi undoubtedly became the hottest topic. An unknown young man had appeared out of nowhere in the High Wind City and obtained the first place in the first and second round of the Tao discussion. Until now, as one of the top 13, he had successfully persisted into the third round of selection. Who could not pay attention to such an amazing achievement? Tomorrow morning, the top 10 competition will be held. At that time, we can see what Jin Duyi's ranking will be. Many people were looking forward to it. It was also on this night that the sect master of the Xuanji Dao sect, Heng Xiao, personally paid a visit to the abode where Lin Sun resided. Young friend, founding ancestor Boyazi has sent news that you can head to the Imperial clan, the Jiang clan, after the Dao discussion of Yinzhou ends. As soon as he arrived, Heng Xiao spoke of the purpose of his visit via voice transmission. Lin Sun was shocked in his heart, and he said, I'll trouble fellow Daoists to send the news that I'll immediately return to the Xuanji Dao sect after the Dao discussion ends. Heng Xiao said with a smile, there's no need to be anxious about this matter. Are you confident in the top 10 competition tomorrow? Lin Sun thought for a moment and said with a smile, it shouldn't be a problem. Heng Xiao said seriously, you have to be careful of Wu Huang. That old bastard, Daoist Lan, has been targeting you at all times. I suspect that if you encounter Wu Huang tomorrow, it's very likely that he'll be ruthless.